Welcome back to another episode of Bars Loaded Podcast. Tonight, Ben and I sat down and discussed all things hypertrophy. We discussed the three mechanisms of hypertrophy, what the main mechanism of hypertrophy is, how we would look at implementing these into a program, how we would structure upper and lower body day hypertrophies, where strength or skill aspects are still a requirement or still something that we would like to focus on as powerlifters within our programming. We also discuss using a belt for bench press, using a belt for squat and deadlift, placement of a belt, ways that your belt may be hindering your performance instead of actually helping your performance, and best practices around tightness of a belt, use of a belt, just in general. If you're a regular Bars Loaded podcast, you'll also know that this was interspersed with a great deal of shit talk in and around everything that is involved with both Ben and I on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. Love to hear your feedback. Make sure that if you are listening to these episodes that you're subscribing on the channels that you're listening to, taking screenshots of yourself, listening to them, sharing them to your socials and tagging us is also very much appreciated. Leave us a rating on the platform that you listen to as well. I feel like an absolute fuckwit saying this to you guys, but it really does help the podcast the more engagement that we get from you guys. So I can see you out there listening. I see the numbers. I know that there are people out there listening. So if you could just take 5 seconds and do that for us, that would be very much appreciated. Without further ado, let's roll into it. And welcome back to Bars Loaded Podcast with Ben and Nick. Unplugged the microphone out of the dodgy USB slot thing that I had that has my mouse in it and keyboard that always disconnect, and it's kind of like wedged into place by a pen cap. Nice. So that it's like on the right angle. Yeah, and I unplugged it out of that and plugged it into the other USB thing that I have that houses my charging cord and the HDMI cable for my second screen. So I'm hoping that this doesn't disconnect, because that last one was an absolute shit show.
No, it actually wasn't that bad, man. Like, I think the more challenging part of the last one was obviously like the delay in like internet connections, where we ask a question, we're like,
"Are you answering? What's going on?"
And welcome back.
It was pretty funny when we asked about the lift, and then we all just kind of sat there
for like 30 seconds, being like, "Ooh, toodly dee, toodly dum."
Was there an answer? I don't know. I didn't hear one.
Nah, well, half the fun.
We got it done. But yeah, I'll be interested to see if this works better. Bro, can you notice anything different about me? There's two things.
You're not wearing your glasses today.
Nope, that's not one of them.
You're not wearing a cap today.
Nope, that's not one of them.
You can't see it in this image, but I saw from before. Forearms are looking fucking tough as shit.
Oh, it's tatted up. That's not the thing, but look at those babies.
Yeah. They're coming up nice.
They look pretty good, hey? That's not the thing. You can see both things right now on the screen. Be observant. Look, it took M 3 days to notice one of them.
No nose piercing.
Yep, well done. What's the other thing?
Are you growing your hair out again?
Yeah, I am.
See, M, that's what a real partner does.
Yeah, that's what the love of my life notices straight away.
Yeah, because I was like, I'm like, yep, I can kind of see like on the right side of your nose. I'm like, is it the right side of your nose or your left side? It's done.
It was straight through the middle.
Oh, well, there goes that thing of me being observant.
Yeah, I had the black one straight through the middle.
Yeah. What made you take that out?
Well, I took it out probably 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I took it out for about 15 minutes and then freaked out. So I got out of the shower, I took it out, and then continued to get ready. We're on our way out for dinner, and then before we left the house, I freaked out and put it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like ever since then, I've kind of just been thinking that I want to take it out, but I was also like worried that maybe I didn't want to take it out. And then yeah, the other day I was like, you know what, fuck it, I just want to take it out, so I just took it out.
Nice.
It's generally how I do things, but I thought on it for a couple of months. I've been just wanting to take it out. I don't know. I just feel like um, I feel like I'm turning 38 this year, and I don't know. Like I just feel like I just didn't want to have it anymore.
It's one of the perks of being an adult is you can make decisions like that without needing to justify it other than I just wanted to.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong. I loved my nose piercing. It was like it's my favorite piercing I think I've ever had. I
Mm-hmm.
loved it for so long. But I just got to the point where I was like, I just don't feel like this is me anymore. Um, so I just took it out.
It's fair enough.
But yeah, the tats aren't going anywhere.
That would be an expensive operation to get rid of them.
No, I love my new tats, dude. I reckon they're so tough.
Mm,
Yeah, live
nice.
fast, die strong.
Get around it.
It's a good saying.
Mm.
How was your weekend, dude? Weekend.
Uh,
I feel like it's been a while since I actually spoke to you. You don't talk to me anymore.
oh, fuck off. I talk to you all the time. Nah, last week was good, man. It was just like things are just getting really busy at the moment. Like we were sort of speaking a little bit earlier today about things just sort of picking up and feeling we just don't have enough hours in the day.
Hmm.
There are some days where I just feel like I'm chasing my tail to no avail, and today kind of feels like one of those days. But the weekend as a whole was just like really fucking busy as well. I was up really early on Saturday morning to get out to a national park out in Gippsland, where I had to crew for someone doing a marathon in a national park, which was fun. Wasn't that much work involved. It was literally just like, hey, you're at the start line. Here are your things. Off you go. I'll see you in a couple of hours. um, and then obviously, drove back to Melbourne in the afternoon. Then had to get ready for basketball on Saturday night. That was, just over an hour from where I live. Didn't get home till 11 o'clock that night. So I was pretty fucked by the time I got home. And then Sunday morning, got like a little bit of work done. Had to go off to basketball again on Sunday afternoon. There's another couple of hours gone. And then sort of got home and like, fuck, I got a lot of work I got to catch up on tonight. So I was up until, you know, later than I would usually like, trying to get everything done before today, and still playing catch up, man. Like it's all
Mm.
fun.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit like that, right? It's like
Mm,
you just got to get done what you can get done, and move forward from there.
yeah. Like thankfully, I mean, I'll get, hope I'll get the rest of my work done tonight that I kind of need to get done. But I was like, worst case scenario, like I've got a bit of a busy morning, obviously tomorrow with all the pre-script stuff, and then obviously we've got an episode tomorrow morning.
Which I'm super excited about, by
Oh,
the
it's
way.
gonna be so fucking good.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm keener than what you would probably understand for tomorrow's episode.
Dude, I think I have a pretty good idea as to how keen you would be based on how long you've been hounding me to get him on.
Mm.
And obviously how much you talk about him in passing. I'm like, I know you're excited for tomorrow's episode. So I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm excited um, by association. And obviously from
I'm
the little amount that I have sort of like seen of his stuff, I'm like, I think it's going to be a really fucking cool conversation, because I've got a few questions I would like to sort of like talk to him. I'm like, if tomorrow goes over an hour, like I'm not going to be that upset.
nah, I'm as excited as tomorrow as what you were for Jordan.
Oh, that's a big call, man.
I honestly, dude, I am. I've been following him for
You
much
almost
longer than
said
I've
his
been
name.
following for much longer than I've been following Jordan.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go.
I've been following him since he had 1,500 followers. He has 11 and a half now, as of yesterday.
I love how you know the fucking specifics of that. You fucking creep.
No, because I was on his page yesterday looking for a link.
Sorry, it's only 11.3.
11.3, same thing. But yeah, I've been following him since he had 1,500. And um, yeah, I've been talking to him via DMs for that basically that entire time.
Mm.
Uh, yes, beyond 3 years. Um, yeah, and it's like I'm super excited about it. It's gonna be a really cool episode.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, how's basketball?
Oh, Saturday night was a little bit frustrating. Um, like they didn't play. They lost by I think like 25 or 26.
Mhm.
They just didn't play their basketball. They very much like we were kind of like we were expecting it to be a tough game, um, but there was just aspects of the game that just they just struggled to find like the momentum and that sort of thing. But like for example, we were like, yeah, like defensive rebounds in particular is an area where we need to be really aggressive. We can't let them get second chances because they get a lot of easy points from second chance baskets. And so, for example, we lost by 25. They got 26 points off second chance baskets.
Wow. Okay.
So that was, so it's always a tough pill to swallow when you have a loss. Um, but they had to obviously play back to back. So they had a game on Sunday and they, came out a little bit slower in the first half of that one. At one point we were down by like 15 points. And a few of us kind of like, oh, fuck, like, if they don't get some momentum going soon, like, they're going to be in trouble. And they ended up pulling it together and ended up winning by 5. So, I mean, like, so far this season, we're 2-1, which, is not terrible.
So they played games back to back.
Yeah. Not every week, but specifically for this weekend. Like, this weekend, we had a double header. Next weekend, we have a single game. The weekend after that, we've got a double header. So it'll
And is it
be,
the same players that back up?
yeah. So we've kind of got like our starting 5, and we rotate through. Like, I mean, we've got like we have a pretty big bench. I think we have like 6, maybe 7 on the bench,
Mm-hmm.
and there's probably like 4 of those guys that get a pretty consistent rotation. But there's always going to be like a couple of guys that just don't get any court time or like very minimal court time. It's always obviously hard to kind of convince them that they're playing their role in the team. Like, there's, in most team sports, like everyone thinks that they should be a starter. Everyone thinks that they should be the star of the team. The reality is like, there are just going to be guys on your team that are better than you and you still have a role to play within the team. Even if that role doesn't necessarily equate to minutes on court, baskets scored, all that sort of stuff. The thing that I'm having a really kind of like fun time with those guys though is trying to do a little bit of like pep talk with them, like before games, after games. There were guys that like, on Saturday night, one of the guys got like less than 60 seconds on court, and he
That's
was
brutal.
pissed. Which I mean, again, like fair enough, but it's like if you're not performing, like you can't really expect to get time on if you can't do the job that you're on the court to do. And like, so I had a chat with him on Saturday night, had another chat with him on Sunday. I'm just like, mate, like I know you were pissed last night you didn't get a whole lot of court time. When you go on today, show us why you deserve more.
Mm.
I'm like, if you can go out and you can do the things that we need you to do and you can do them better than the other guys, guess what? You're going to get more time here. But this is also where, like, this is not a charity event. Like, we're not going to give you minutes just because you are here. Like, you need to earn your minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always the interesting part. Like, there are some guys on our team that are, 19, 20 years old. And there are some guys on our team that are, 29, 30 years old. And the conversations that you have with a guy that, is only a couple of years younger than you versus a guy that's like 15 years younger than you. Like, it's so interesting being, 15 years older than some of these kids. And it's weird that I say like kids when I'm 15 years older than them. But like, I literally look at them, I'm like, what I would fucking give to be like 19 or 20 and playing like a level or two below NBL. Like,
Yeah,
you
I
guys are
know.
playing quite competitive basketball here, and you're bitching about like, not getting court time or just like the fact that you're having an off day. And I get in my head, I'm like, we obviously talk about like days when we have off days of training and, it's not the end of the world. It's like, one bad session here or there. It's not the end of the world. One bad comp here or there, not the end of the world. But these guys can sometimes take like one bad game of basketball and that can write them off for weeks. So
Yeah, that's definitely an experience thing. I feel like that definitely comes with experience, and some people never get it, but it comes easier with experience, understanding that like you're only as good as your last game, you're only as good as your last play,
yeah,
and that's not always going to be great, and you just kind of have to not dwell on it and compartmentalize and move forward. Otherwise, it's a downward spiral very quickly sometimes.
100%. Yeah,
And you can even see that within games. A lot of the younger guys, if they make a mistake, start kicking rocks or get in their own head, and they stop trying to take the shot, or they overthink it, or they overcorrect it, and then they go on a bad streak, and
yeah,
then they're trying to push the extra pass instead of taking the open shot because their confidence is down, and then it compounds, and then it carries on out of that game into practice into the next game, and then that's how a form slump even can kind of manifest itself, or from not having the ability to compartmentalize and just being like, that was a bad play, that doesn't mean I'm a bad player, on to the next.
yeah. And that's where like, we had some guys on, say, Saturday night, for example, who like, we've got a couple of guys on our team that are like, frankly, really fucking good.
Hmm.
Like, we have a white guy from, I think he's from Minnesota, who has the most insane vertical I've ever seen. To the point where,
Well, he's
like,
got hops.
when he dunks, his head is at the height of the ring.
Oh, that's so cool.
And he's like 6'3". Like,
This
he's not
man's
that tall when he's like as a basketballer.
man's just
And
bouncy.
yeah, but this is also like the really interesting thing is like, he came up to me, he's like, oh man, like, can you help me with like a flexibility program? I'm like, why? And he's like, oh, because I've been told like I'm too tight and that like I need to be more mobile. I'm like, bro, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
Did
like,
the
I don't
person that tell you that be able to touch their head on the ring? No.
like literally. And I said to him,
Just
I'm like,
shut the
look,
fuck up.
I'm like, if you couldn't dunk, sure, we could probably sit there and go, you should probably do a bit of mobility work so that you're in better condition. But I'm like, dude, fuck, man. I'm like, you jump like a fuck, like you've got springs in your shoes. We ain't changing shit with you.
No.
But
I
it's
wonder who
also,
told him that. That's funny.
I don't know, but like this guy is just like an athlete. Like I had a bit of a stalk on his Facebook, and like, typical American kid, played football, played baseball, played basketball.
Yeah, played
Like,
everything. Triple
just
athlete.
like every time you see him in photos of the sports, like him like holding a medal or like a trophy or something like that. I'm like, yeah, this kid's a born champion. But like he didn't have like the greatest game on Saturday night.
What's his last name? McCaffrey?
Oh, I think if someone had the last name McCaffrey and they had a bad game, they would be disowned by the family.
Yeah, it used to be until he had a
Yeah.
bad game in under sixes.
Yeah. But like, some like obviously some games you see guys like that, and they like they probably miss more shots than they would probably normally miss, and like they come off onto the bench for a bit of a rest. It's just like cool, man. Like shake it off. Like you can shoot. Just keep taking the shot. Like
Yep.
it's either gonna hit or it's gonna make the other guys swarm you. In which case we get openings that we can take advantage of.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you see it with the best of the best just keep shooting, right? Like
Yeah.
my favorite basketball player of all time, not necessarily who I think is the greatest of all time. He's definitely up there in the conversation. I think in at the top somewhere is Kobe. He's my favorite athlete of all time, hands down. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the one of he's in my list of top 5 most interesting humans of all time as well.
Yeah.
Fascinating human being, absolutely incredible athlete. You look back on Kobe's career, and he didn't always make the shot. A lot of the time, he missed a fuckload of shots. But you know what he kept doing? Kept
Kept
fucking
shooting.
shooting. He just kept shooting, and eventually they started to go in.
Well, I mean, like there's quite a few like you hear. I think it's in there's a basketball documentary. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but where they talk about when like they'd rock up to training at like for a 6 o'clock breakfast for like a team thing, and he'd been at the gym since like 4:30, practicing shots for an hour and a half before anyone else got there.
Mm-hmm.
And like that sort of discipline and that sort of like commitment to your craft as an athlete is 100% necessary for you to really have a shot in hell of being hyper successful. But I
Also
mean,
understanding that amount of dedication and time put towards your craft in a training environment, I feel like that also builds a level of I'm not going to say mental resilience because I really am not a huge fan of that term at all. And we won't get into that right now, but I think
oh, but we will.
it builds a certain level of I guess inbuilt default settings to where you know that you can do the job, you know that you can take the shot, you know that you can squat, and to bring it back to powerlifting, when you do those reps and you have the confidence in the fact that you've put the time in and you've done the work, a bad squat doesn't mean you're a bad lifter. It means it was about one bad lift.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to then compartmentalize that, that's when you see people come back and have good meets after a bad start, for example, or
Yeah.
come back next week after a bad lift and finish off the prep strong. One bad
Mm.
lift doesn't make a bad lifter, and one bad shot doesn't make a bad shooter. It's just being able to compartmentalize that moment and move forward. I feel like is probably an underspoken about trait of athletes that I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the hyper successful all possess.
Yeah. But yeah, like so obviously sort of like going back to like your original question, like the guys did like they had an okay weekend. They obviously didn't play their basketball on Saturday night, paid the price for it, and then came back on um, Sunday and like, managed to come back from like a 15-point deficit at like halftime or quarter time or whatever time it was, to the point where like at, just before the fourth quarter started, they were pretty much within like striking distance, got a bit of momentum early in the fourth quarter, managed to get, a bit of a lead and managed to hold on to that lead, and finish with a W. But it's definitely interesting as well. Obviously, like you and I, we do a lot of work with powerlifters and sort of bringing it back to the conversation we've been having around like other athletes and their chosen sports. In this sort of instance where we do have, you know, teams where the guys aren't playing at a level where they're actually being paid. Like, these guys have full-time jobs and then they're coming and they're playing this sport in their spare time and sort of dedicating, hours per week to try and pull something together here. It's definitely interesting to see the differing levels of commitment between the guys that really want to succeed and the guys that are just there to kind of tick boxes.
Hmm.
And I think this is obviously something that you know I would see like across a professional level as well. Specifically, like when we do look at our powerlifting clients, like we have some that take it so seriously. It was like all of the little 1%ers are ticked off, and then we see the other guys that come through like, oh well, I did my program, maybe didn't like nail my sleep, my nutrition, these other things I know I need to do to be hyper successful, but they're still doing sort of like enough to scrape through. Like there are guys in the team that I talk to, and I'm like, what are you doing training wise outside of here? And they're like, oh, nothing. And then when they come to me, they're like, oh man, like, my knees are sore. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like for one, you're like 6'6", you have 3/5 of fuck all muscle mass on you. No wonder your joints are sore.
Hmm.
And then like obviously, when we look at the education that we do in terms of like understanding injury is, force greater than tissue tolerance, or applied force greater than tissue tolerance. It's like trying to explain it to them in a way where it's like, hey guys, like you need to have some muscle to like insulate the joints and the connective tissues from this damage. And then they're like, oh, okay. But then it's like trying to undo decades worth of, hey, this is how you warm up for a basketball game, and this is how you cool down from a basketball game. It's like sports
When
science
you,
has come along a lot further than the basketball warm ups that fuck I did when I was a kid, and they're the same warm ups.
oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
you see that
everyone
across
does
the
their
board.
high knees. They're like, grapevine runs up and down half court. They do their butt kicks, the all that kind of shit. I'm like, there's so much more to it than that, guys. Like, but like trying to come in and be like, hey, this is a change that we are implementing. Like, we're not doing this crap anymore. Well, not calling it crap, but like, guys, like we're going to be a little bit smarter about this. We're going to be a little bit more intelligent about it. It's obviously interesting to convince the guys that hey guys, there is a better way to do it other than the way that has been led for decades.
Yeah, I would find that really interesting to work with athletes with those leverages as well. When you think of someone that's like I'm six, like 6'5", 6'6", like
You're mid size on our team.
kind of in between there. I closer to 6'6" than 6'5",
Mm-hmm.
depending on the type of day. So I always just say 6'6" because it sounds cooler.
Yeah.
Um, but I know, like, obviously, my leverages are a challenge to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, imagine if you're 6'9", and you don't have, and I feel like for my size, I have a decent amount of muscle mass built up. Um,
Do you
so
want
it's
to know
like,
something fucked?
yeah, of course.
So the guys on our team that are like 6'8", 6'9", they weigh under 100 kilos.
Yeah, see, that's crazy. I weighed myself the other day. I weigh 120,
Yeah,
which is that's light for me.
I know.
I'd like to be around 125, 130, and a little bit leaner than I am now. So that's kind of the goal. But to be that size and that light tells me straight out of the gate they're obviously fit. So they're not too fat. I'm just picturing like really lean, like long and lean, which is like, okay, if you don't have the the tissue there to find stability, you're gonna find it somewhere else, and it's
Mm,
going to be through your structure. And so,
yeah,
like, you're self organizing in a way that you can like stabilize yourself by just like jamming shit together where it's not meant to be jammed together, and then also trying to run, jump, change direction. Like, that's a recipe for disaster
yeah.
over a period of time.
So this is where like, so did I tell you that I wrote like a club S&C program?
I think you might have.
To be honest, I was actually pretty fucking proud of it. Like I read through it, I'm like, there's some good like base level strength development in here. There's some good like power work. There's some good rotation work. There's some plyometric work in there. There's some landing mechanic stuff in there, like and then some just general like accessory work to like make sure that things are moving nicely. I'm like, I think that's a pretty well-rounded program.
Hmm.
But it's always the thing where I'm like, again, if they were a professional team where these guys were at training every single day and that was their job, and I could be like, hey, well, guys, I'm going to have you in the gym 4 days a week, and you're probably going to practice, 4 or 5 days a week, and you're going to play once a week. You're all, being paid enough where you can prioritize, making sure you're eating enough to support performance and support recovery, and you guys can obviously, pay to get regular soft tissue treatment, all that sort of stuff to help keep things moving in the right direction. Very different story. But again, like some of these guys, they've got full time jobs where they're, tradies, but like, they're off, as a chippy building houses all fucking day. And then they come into basketball and they're like, oh, well, I've only had a handful of shit to eat, but I'm trying to like run ramp and perform well. It's like, man, you got to eat more.
Yeah. But I mean, even just having you there and giving them a base level program to work off, and if any of them went and did that, or even just the fact that you were available to them, I feel like would be a net positive
Mm.
and yield a positive outcome for them from a psychological standpoint as well. And that's another area of like athlete management that I think doesn't get enough airtime, is like, how are we managing our athletes psychologically? Because
Yeah.
we know, like I know from experience, that athletes are creatures of habit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, when I was an athlete, I did the same things before every game. We just spoke to Sarah an hour ago, and she said that she puts her left wrist strap on before her right one, and she wears the same undies for every meet. And it's like, these are superstitions that athletes have all the time. These superstitions can extend to like foods that you eat prior to the game that might not necessarily be like tick the optimal box, but if it's optimal from like and putting you in the right mindset, then potentially that could be a trade-off that we might look at having.
Mm.
Things like manual therapy, like, is rubbing your hamstring going to break up scar tissue? Probably not. If we know that it takes around 2,000 like tons
Pounds
of
of
pressure
pressure.
to pounds of pressure to break scar tissue, like, is rubbing your fingers on your hamstring going to break up any scar tissue? Probably not. But if it makes that athlete feel like their hamstring is now looser, sick.
Mm.
Like, that's a benefit. That's a positive, because now they're going to go and they're going to run faster. They're going to, you know, tackle harder. They're going to do all the things that are going to make them a better athlete,
Yeah.
just because they feel like they can.
Yeah. 100%.
So like, yeah, cool. Let's give them this program, and like, they might do one day out of it, but they might turn up to the game and feel like they're in a better position than they were last week. That's probably going to be a good thing.
Well, like, for example, I told you about that pitter patter drill that I would run them through as part of their conditioning work, right?
Mm.
Literally within 2 weeks of doing that, I had one of the centers come up to me and he was like, dude, that drill fucking sucks. But he goes, I've already noticed that in the last 2 training sessions, when I land on the ground and I need to like pivot and like change direction and move and have like less contact time with the ground, he goes, I've already noticed that I'm lighter on my feet.
Yeah. And like, how much of that is from actually being lighter on his feet? How much is it from having more coordination around how he uses his feet? And how
Mm.
much is it psychological? It really doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, if it's
Like,
perceived that he's lighter and he's faster, it's like, cool, that's great. That's all we're really
yeah,
looking for
it
now.
doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I
yeah,
think that's
it'll,
really cool.
yeah, but I mean, like, it's been a lot of fun. Like, so it was interesting. I wasn't really quite sure as to like how much work I was going to get out of it, like privately, whether any of the guys would actually reach out to me and be like, hey, look, we want to come and do like some one-on-one work. But I've got a few of the guys that have sort of reached out in the last probably like 2 weeks or so to be like, hey, look, this is something I'm interested in. Can we explore that? So yeah, it's quite interesting to see how it's all starting to come together. And obviously, they're 2 weeks into, I think like 17 weeks worth of comp season. So it'll be really interesting to see how all the boys hold up over the next, 4 months.
Yep.
But yeah, it'll be good.
Dude, can you does my hairline look really bad?
No, why?
Oh, my hair's still pretty short. I've only been growing it for a few days, but I go through this cycle um, where I actually hate being bald.
Mm.
I know that you've given me compliments on multiple occasions recently about how much you like me bald. I
Mm-hmm.
hate being bald.
Mm.
I'm super self conscious about it. It's actually the thing that I'm most self conscious about is that I hate being bald. Um, but so then I start to grow my hair back. But the reason why I shave my hair is because I also fucking hate my hairline that's receding so far. So it's like pick your hate. Are you going to be bald and hate that, or are you going to have some hair and hate your hairline? It doesn't matter. Either way, I'm super self conscious about what's on my head.
Have you ever, and this is obviously like a weird little tangent for our podcast, but I also feel like it's a perfect little tangent because it's got nothing to do with the topics. But have you ever considered getting like a hair transplant?
I have. I looked into it a couple of months ago and got priced it up and everything. I can fly to Turkey and get it done and fly back for about 6,000 AUD.
Mm-hmm.
That includes flights, the transplant, the five-star hotel that they put you up in, and Uber to and from to the clinic from the hotel and back to the hotel from the clinic, all the aftercare products, and the flight home. It'll be a 3 day trip, and about 6 grand. So it's something that Em and I have on the list for me to do either this year or next year.
Mm.
And it is something that I want to do. To be honest with you, it's not something that I thought I would ever be talking about on a podcast and putting it out into the world. But I actually even went as far as to look at fucking stick on toupees on the weekend
Mm.
that you shave the top of your head
Yep.
and keep the sides, let the sides grow out to like a two or three, shave the top like a George Costanza, and then you put a glue on the top of your head and then a adhesive on the bottom of the toupee, and you stick it on, and then you go to the hairdresser and get the sides faded in, and it stays on for like a week at a time.
Do you want to know what's actually really interesting about the fact that you mentioned that today?
What's up?
When I was having a bit of a scroll through some reels over the weekend, it was the first time that I've seen that come up as one of the pieces of content that's come up in like my explore thing. Like when you are going through your reels,
Was it a barber's page that he was a barber and he was doing it to himself?
I think so. But he shows him
Yeah.
like taking it off, he washes it, and then like
Yep.
reshaves his head and then
Yep.
reapplies it.
Yeah,
I
I doom scrolled his page for like 2 hours on Saturday afternoon before I fell asleep on the lounge.
couldn't tell you what his name was, but it came up in my like explore page of like, hey, this is like as a barber who wears a toupee, like this is how I work with it. And obviously
It's just
quite I wonder if
Instagram
uh
spying on us.
well, I mean they 100% are, but I wonder if they've gone, we'll show it to Ben so that he mentions it to Nick. And then Nick will say that, oh, funny you mentioned that. I was looking at them over the weekend
You can
and
pay
it's,
for stuff like that.
I don't know,
You can pay for stuff like that.
which
So
is crazy.
you know how people are like, "Oh, I think my phone's listening to me."
Mm,
It is.
I know. Literally,
Do you
when
know
you
how I
go,
know it is? Because I've looked into how much it costs to run ads based on what people say to their phones.
really,
Yes, it's you can buy it.
that doesn't surprise me
Yeah.
because obviously, as they collect data, they sell that data.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yep. To advertising companies, you can literally pay a package that shoots your ad to anyone that mentions powerlifting and is picked up by their phone, and your ad will get shown on their phone to them on their social media.
I mean, like in some ways, it's pretty fucking cool that you can do marketing like that. But at the other time, it's like, get the fuck out of my face.
It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the times we live in. But yeah, so I'm kind of a little self conscious about it, but I'm also kind of like, I'm really self conscious every day about being bald. So it's like, I'm just going to roll with some hair for a little while, I think.
I got two suggestions for you: hats and beanies.
Oh yeah, I wear
So,
them all the time, but I also don't want to have to wear them because I'm super self-conscious about being bald.
see, it's funny the amount of people that are like, "Oh, like do you wear hats all the time because you're balding?" And I'm like, no. Like the funny thing is that's not receding for me. That's just where my hairline has been for as long as I can fucking remember.
Yeah, but see, mine's worse than that. Mine goes back to here.
Yeah, see, mine's like there's, but I've always had like a pretty noticeable like devil's peak.
This is not a devil's peak, bro. This is like fucking. I don't even know. Look at that. That's like Satan's fucking swimming pool. I
Yeah,
don't. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense. I just was trying to run with the devil theme.
yeah, we can work with that though. But yeah, like I pretty much fucking live with either a cap or a beanie on, and with Melbourne being so like it literally just feels like a fucking cold snap kicked us in the dick overnight. Um, but that does mean like beanie weather, and obviously like you can tell by my attire at the moment, like I'm not exactly dressed in like
Summer
just
clothing.
summer clothing. Like it's very much a yeah, okay. It's starting to get like this morning. I left home. It was like fucking 9 degrees. I was like, get fucked.
Whew,
Yeah, it's a bit rude.
chilly.
Very chilly. But that is one of the pros and cons of living in Melbourne.
I think I'm gonna go with a faded mohawk, but not like a mohawk, like like the footy player faded kind of like mohawk mullet thing that they've got going on.
Mm,
I think I'm gonna go with that
nice.
because I've got length at the back.
Are you gonna go like the skullet?
No, like I'm not gonna grow it out like long, but I'll
Mm,
grow it like just like a like I don't know, like a five on top and on the back, and like skin fade on the sides, so that it's like contrasting but not like flowing.
yeah,
Um, I think that'll play to my strengths a little bit.
mm, be a bit of fun,
This this has now turned into a hair podcast, which is fantastic.
man. I'm all for making our pod. I mean, to be fair, a couple of weeks ago we did speak about shaving our balls and sunning our assholes. So for us
Yeah,
talking
and
a
we
little
had a
bit
great
about
response.
a surprisingly good response about the whole like sunning of the anus.
Yeah, we actually had someone reach out and enlighten us,
Pun intended.
pun intended,
But
enlighten us on the positive benefits on asshole sunning. And comes from a person that claims to do it. And I say claims because
we
I
don't want
don't
photo proof.
I don't think this person would lie to me. I do trust this person, but I'm also slightly skeptical that this person might be having me on as a practical joke to try and get me to do it so then he can laugh at me.
I say fair play. Play on, good sir.
Well, if that happens, he deserves the laugh because that is a game well played, sir.
But yeah, I think if we're gonna talk about shaving our balls and sunning our assholes, I think we can definitely talk about hair care as well.
We did also get the hot tip from another avid bars loaded listener, a spotter and loader, if you will, that if you are going to go down the route of regular sack maintenance, that the Manscaped V3 is the way to go.
Dare I ask who chimed in with that piece of advice?
It's someone that you know quite well. We speak about this individual
Okay, I know,
very often.
I know who exactly who it is.
I got sent a link and a in-depth, very autistic rundown on the benefits of the Manscaped V3. I even got given a detailed a detailed like upgrade list of what the V3 has that the V2 doesn't have, and why it's much better to indulge in the newer model. And I luckily didn't get photo evidence, but I did get a descriptive play-by-play on what results I could expect from utilizing such tool.
Make your shaft look 13% larger.
You can imagine.
This
You
individual
can
putting that
you
rant in.
can you can imagine the detail of what I was given from this individual, because I'm going to preface it for everyone that may not know who this is, uh, and I'm going to say I once caught. No, I didn't catch him because it wasn't anything wrong. I once witnessed this individual in the gym download a. Okay, I'll tell the full story. I walked into the gym one day. This individual was standing, kind of half kneeling with his camera, with his phone, like looking through his phone and like twisting his phone up and down, side to side, pointing it at a machine. And I was like, oh, that looks really weird. Like he kind of looks like Steve Irwin with a camera, like photographing the wild. Like, what's he trying to capture here?
Crikey, look
So
at this piece of Nautilus.
look at this incline chest press. Look at it just sitting here. I've captured it beautifully in mating season. I went over and I was like, "What are you doing, dude?" And this individual was like, "I downloaded a protractor app, and I'm just determining the press angle of this incline press."
Good.
So that's the level of detail that we're speaking here. So yeah, it will leave you with 0.1 millimeter of fuzz. It was beautiful. But yeah, Manscaped V3. Apparently, that's the way to go if you do that.
And believe it or not, guys, this is not a sponsored post. Although, if anyone from Manscaped is listening and you want it to be a sponsored like a sponsored post, you know where to find us.
Yeah, reach out. If anyone has Manscaped connections, send this to them. Just screen record, send it to them. I'll mention them every day. If my balls are that fresh and it's that good, I'll tell the world. I'll show the world.
Also, I will 100% like do a before and after for them. Like,
Yeah.
guys, this is my balls before the Manscaped V5 or whatever they're up to now, and this is my balls afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how long the post will last on socials, but you know what? It'll be all the rave. Everyone will be talking about it. They'll be like, "Oh my god, did you see Ben's balls on Instagram?" Then everyone will be like, "Yeah, I did. They looked sensational after you used the Manscaped products."
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
guys,
the way to go.
all over it.
That's the way to go.
How's your weekend?
Yeah. Oh man, my weekend was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, my weekend was great. I had breakfast on Saturday morning for my dad's birthday.
Happy birthday, Daddy Nick.
Yeah. In that, we went into Honeysuckle, which is like Newcastle foreshore, and we had breakfast at a really like nice little breakfast cafe there with the family. So that was cool. Got to catch up with my sister after she got back. They just got back from their quick little honeymoon that they had after their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was there. My brother's he's like the president. I think he's the president of the local footy club here. So that was fun just to kind of chat with him about, what their team has going on versus what my team has going on, and what that was. My dad's been running recently. He's got back into running, so that was pretty fun to just chat to him about running. He tried to convince me to do a park run on my birthday, which is coming up, with him and my brother, which I quickly shut down.
Smart.
5K is not my thing.
Fair.
Yeah, not that's just far too. That's far too far.
You're like, instead of doing a 5K run with you guys on my birthday, why don't you come with me and we'll do 5 plate squats for AMRAPs?
Yeah, I would do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, they're good times.
Yeah, so that was fun, and then I came home, dropped Em off, and then I actually came back into town for footy on Saturday. So footy on Saturday. Do you know what the Magic Round is?
I do not.
So in the NRL, they've been doing this thing for a few years called Magic Round.
Hmm.
And I don't know exactly what round it is. It's one of the rounds during the year where all of the teams fly to Brisbane and they play all of the matches at the ANZ Stadium in Brisbane, like kind of back to back over the weekend.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, when you're growing up and you have gala days and all of the teams play at the same spot. It's kind of like that.
Cool.
Um, and they have vendors that go there, and they have bands and DJs and cool entertainment other than football as well going on. So you buy a ticket to Magic Round and you get to experience all of it. It's kind of like a big fun weekend.
Hmm.
So this year is the first year that the Newcastle Rugby League has implemented a Magic Round in the Denton Cup, which is the first grade, like, top tier competition that my team plays in.
Hmm.
And so that was on Saturday, and it was for round one. So this is how they're kicking off the season every year now, is with a Magic Round at Number Two Sports Ground in Newcastle, which is, I don't know if you spent much time in actual Newcastle.
Is that the big?
The big one in town, kind of near where the beaches are,
Yeah.
where the netball courts and stuff are.
Oh, that's not like where they hold the markets and stuff on weekends.
No, so if you go past that and you go like all the way into town,
Mm.
like you were going to the beach, there's a gym in there called
Because I know, like, the
can't remember
extent
what it's called. It's
of
like
the
right
stuff
near
that I
there.
kind of remember was when we'd go down to like Merriweather Baths.
Yeah, so it's literally 5 minutes from there, not even 5 minutes, 2 minutes from there. There's like
Okay.
a whole bunch of netball courts, a huge big field that's fenced off with a big grandstand and everything. It's in there.
Okay. Cool.
So it's this whole big kind of like sporting complex.
Hmm.
And so all of the teams played there all on Saturday back to back.
Hmm.
So that was fucking cool, man, because I didn't really know what to expect when I turned up, but when I got there, it was packed. They had like a wrestling ring set up where they were doing like exhibition WWE wrestling matches, not WWE, but like the local version of WWE. On the side of the field, they had like vendor tents behind all the way across the try line on both hills, and then they've got the big grandstand which was packed, and then on both sides of the fields they had these big ass fucking speakers that were just like blasting music, and they had a fucking commentator the whole time. Um, so it was such a sick atmosphere, and then um, went down. Like, we were allowed into the sheds at 2, and as you can imagine, usually when you have two teams playing at a field, it's like one team has the home shed, one team has the away shed. It's like, all well and good. You'll kind of go through the day. You've got your 19s, your reserve grade, your first grade, and all of the people are just in the sheds at once.
Hmm.
But because there was fucking like 12 teams playing on the one day, 6 had to go in the away sheds, 6 had to go in the home sheds, and we had to like share sheds, and then we had to wait for the game before us. They got ready, and then the game before them, when they finished, they came into the shed. So then they had to get changed, shower, get the fuck out of the shed so that we could get into the sheds and start getting ready. It was like, fuck, like under the grandstand in the sheds was an absolute shit show. There was just like teams everywhere, players everywhere, officials everywhere. It was fucking wild.
Chaos.
Oh, it was absolute chaos. And the head coach for our team was like, Nick, I need you to go and get a table and fill up 20 cups of water and 20 cups of Gatorade for the boys so that they can kind of get some fluids into them before they go out and warm up. And then while we're warming up, I want you to fill up 20 of each again. And then just before halftime, I want you to fill up 20 each again. So that's kind of what I do for first grade.
Mm-hmm.
That's my contribution to the first grade squad, um, that I do every week. And so the thing is because there was no fucking table in the sheds. So I'm like running around trying to find a table. Ended up in the media room where they're televising, live streaming these things from. And there's like all of these New South Wales Rugby League officials up there. And there was a table like near the front door, like near the sliding doors into that room that had um, like 10 bottles of sunscreen on it. And I just kind of looked at them and they looked at me and I looked at the table. And then I just walked over to the table and took the sunscreen off it, folded the table up and walked out and just didn't even say anything. Like, no one stopped me. So I was like, fuck it. Like, if anyone asks, I'll just say it's for the players.
Mm.
Walked down and set that up. That was all good. But dude, it was cool. I actually ran into a guy that I grew up playing a lot of footy with, played a lot of my nights footy with.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing the S&C for one of the other teams. So it was cool to catch up with him. Caught up with one of my old coaches.
Mm-hmm.
He was there watching. Caught up with another one of my old coaches. He was there coaching one of the other first grade teams. Caught up with one of the old managers from one of my Knights team. He's managing for one of the other local teams' leagues. After the game, caught up with the fella that I grew up playing with, who's actually come out of retirement to play again this year, and scored a try against us. So that was fun to catch up with a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, probably the best part of the whole day, other than us winning round one, which is always nice, was we have a kid. I feel like I'm rambling, but it was fun. We have this kid, and I say kid, he's not a kid, he's a young man who has played first grade NRL for Parramatta, and then had some family issues, left, got an early release from his contract, went back to the bush, and then he come back to us this year with the intention of kind of like rebuilding his career as a second shot at it to get back to the NRL.
Mm-hmm.
Gun fella, like he's fit in super well. He's brought a ton of he's just slotted into the program and the system really well. Earned his starting spot on the wing in round one. And before the match, they actually did a jersey presentation for him where our head coach did a little bit of a speech, then gave the jersey to his high school football coach who made the trip from like Tari or something to be there to do the jersey presentation for him because this guy calls this fella dad. It's like his dad that he never had.
Mm-hmm.
So then he did a little 5-minute speech and like it was like super touching. A fella was holding back tears, and then it was such a cool, touching moment for him to get presented this jersey. And Maitland is such a kind of prestigious club. We perennially at the top of the table and have a lot of steeped in history, and it was just really cool to see that before a game. He went out, scored 2 tries on debut, had a fantastic game. Come back into the sheds to take it full circle. The boys have this tradition that they do for all new players that I didn't know about but got to witness, and it was fucking pretty awesome. So little fella went out, the fella on the team went out, got 3 cans of beer, come back in, and coach had his little chat, and then guy walked over, gave the Ethan the the new guy, gave him a beer. They started doing the "Here's Heath and he's True Blue" chant. This was after the team song, so everyone's revved up. Got him to scull a beer. So he sculls the can, right? They had the other cans hidden, so he thought it was only one can. Then they give him another one straight after he sculled it, and they're like, "Real men, do it again. Real men, do it again." He's like, "Ah, shit." Fucking cracked the second one, sculled the second one, and then as he's finishing the second one, they whip out the third one, crack it, and then give it to him, and then they started chanting something else, and then counted down from 10, made him scull a third one. By the third one, he was struggling so bad.
Yeah, no shit.
Like 3 beers back to back.
Mm.
But yeah, that was such a cool day, man. Like, I love footy days.
This is the, I know we talk about this a lot, but like, I think this is the thing about team sport culture and environment that people in powerlifting, if they haven't come from that as a background, I think they're just missing out on.
Hmm.
Like, we had one of the guys on Sunday who had his first win with the club. So he was by himself in the middle of the room. Everyone's got the drink bottles open, and we just fucking soak him from head to toe in like Gatorade and water,
Yeah.
as we sing the club song. So obviously, it's always a good environment in the locker rooms after you have a win, especially when it's someone's first win, because you get to celebrate that really, really nicely. Obviously,
Yeah.
Compared to the night before, we were in the locker rooms and it was a bit somber. We're all a little bit, sort of tail between our legs, looking at our wounds, sort of thing. I just think, yeah, like the little tributes that we kind of have, or the little like, what's what I'm looking for here? The like just like the things that the clubs do, or like the people within the clubs will do as part of like the celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an aspect of powerlifting that I hope one day, powerlifting does sort of rise to the level of, even if it's just like an amateur sport where it's like, yeah, there are, clubs that you can be affiliated with, and, there's that sort of team environment, even though like on the day you're the one up on the platform doing the thing. Like, I genuinely hope we get to a point where, it might be, oh, well, like there's like legitimate team champs every single year. They're, powerlifting clubs become a thing again, rather than the prevalence of, the lone online coach, which again, not that I'm bashing that, because that kind of encapsulates you and me. I I think you and we're trying to do a good job at like trying to build our stable of competitors so that we can start taking teams to events and going, hey, look, you know what, we're here to celebrate people. Like you mentioned last week that, Crystal rocks up to spot to load and help people that she's never met before. I think things like that is a great starting place for a lot of the culture that team sports brings to competition that I think powerlifting desperately needs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've taken teams to comps last year. I took a team of 5 to a breakthrough novice comp.
Remember that?
Um, and that was the same thing, just like so much better when it's a team environment and you've got your mates there with you doing it. And those guys all kind of prepped together as well, which was really nice. At the comp late last year at Hunter Strength, we had a bit of a team between my clients and Am's nutrition clients. I think we had about 9 athletes total from our team compete on the day, which again, like, it just creates so much more of a fun. You kind of feel like you're bigger than something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
I have 7 athletes coming up competing at states. Not this weekend, next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So the weekend that this airs, I think, will be States weekend.
Yep.
So again, that'll be and then M has nutrition clients that are competing there as well. So that'll be like another decent team for us there on that day. And it's something that I genuinely enjoy doing is trying to foster a team environment because there's honestly nothing like it.
Mm.
It's infectious and it makes you want to do better.
Yeah.
And it just makes you happy. Like it genuinely makes me happy, which I there's very few things in life that I can say that.
Do you want to know why I reckon that is?
Of course.
I think innately as humans, there's something very tribal about us. Whether you want to try and do the whole like, oh well, I'm an introvert, I don't like people, rah rah rah. I'm like, no, no, no. It's just the people that you do like, they're specific people. And I
Hmm.
think when we do go into a team environment, it's like, yeah, like we're here for a common goal. Again, I was sort of talking a little bit earlier with the basketball team. Like there are going to be some people that play a larger role some weeks other compared to others. Like some weeks you won't get any game time, but you still play a role in supporting the team as they come on and off the bench. I think when we do look at, team sports as a whole, whether it's like powerlifting, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whatever it might be, that innate sense of like, hey, like we're part of a tribe, it provides us with a sense of belonging.
Hmm.
And I think, you and I think we can probably both agree, like we quite enjoy our solitude. We're very selective with the people that we do want to spend a lot of time with. But the fact that you and I go into these environments where we're around a lot of people, you know, it doesn't really matter. Like we still have a fucking great time.
Hmm.
And we're like, yeah, this is amazing. It's the energy in these rooms is infectious. And I think that sense of belonging, that sense of, hey, look, we're part of something that's bigger than us as an individual, and we do have that, like tribe community that kind of brings us all together. It's like cool. It ticks a lot of boxes that are required for like overall human well being. Um, but I think as well, like the fact that it's something physical that requires a high level of athleticism to be successful in, I feel like that just adds another layer of it to makes it significantly more entertaining for us.
Yeah, entertaining for sure. And I think for me personally, it always comes back to service.
Mm.
For me personally, like that's all there is.
Yeah.
Like quite literally, I feel like that's the meaning of life. For me personally, I honestly would tell you the meaning of life is service, and I can see that trend through pretty much everything that I've ever done in my life. Has
Mm-hmm.
I can always attribute that back to service. Even like playing team sports for me was an act of service to my teammates. You like everything that I did was in service to the team, was in service to the club, was in service to my mate next to me that needed me to show up more than I needed myself to show up.
Mm.
And it was like, and I see that in my coaching. I see that now where it's like I I was a great football player. Like you can, and I don't say that ever to anyone. But like, if you ask people that know, like they will tell you I was a very good football player, and um, to me, like looking back, and I much prefer now to be the guy cutting tape off the fucking shoulders of these guys after the game and walking around the sheds when everyone's there picking up rubbish and throwing it in the bin, making sure the sheds are clean for the next guy, or being on my fucking hands and knees at halftime filling up water bottles on the field while they were in doing their halftime chat, so that when they came out, they had water for the second half. Like that's just another level of act of service for me, to where it's like, cool, this is now me doing my part so that they can have success and they can live those years that I lived,
Mm.
where I was the guy on the receiving end of other people doing that for me. And it was just a cool moment where, me and the other fella that I grew up with, we were both in the same Knights teams and representative teams, and he was a very good back rower. We both kind of looked over at each other and we're both just there filling up water bottles. We just like, it was just a kind of cool sliding doors moment where we were like, wow, it really has come full circle. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And like, I feel like as humans, we're always happiest when we're serving others.
Yeah, like I think as well, if we, again, like this could piss off some of the more progressive people, but I think if you look at like family dynamics as well from say 50 years ago, it's like the husband would go out and they would be the breadwinner and they would provide for their family and be of service to their family by earning good money to provide. And then the wife would be of service to the family by making sure the family was looked after. And they were the roles that we played. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
things have changed a little bit nowadays in that like men and women can be of service to their families in different ways. But I think it still comes back to, I don't think it matters if you're looking in sport, if you're looking in family, like it doesn't really matter what avenue it is. I think you nailed it absolutely fucking perfectly. That literally everything that we do as humans to find a high sense of value and fulfillment with the things that we do in life, I think there needs to be a level of service to another.
Of course. Well, like, what else is there?
Look, I mean, I think even if you break down like what people are doing with high level businesses, I think if even if you break down something like Elon buying Twitter and then rebranding to X, you know, there are people like
He's
regardless of whether
he's
you like him or hate him, like his service to people was providing a platform with less censorship.
Yeah, like everything that those people have done have been in service to other people. Take Jeff Bezos for example. Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amazon. Dude was selling books.
Hmm.
That's a service. Expanded to sell other things. That's a service. How did he get famous? Because he had the biggest selection of shit and super fast shipping.
Mm.
Yeah, like now he's really rich, but he didn't start rich.
I mean,
Look at Apple. Like old mate Steve Jobs died a very rich man, but like he wasn't always rich, and like he got rich because of the service that he was able to provide to others, and
yeah.
just enough people were like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to be a part of that, and
Mm.
then he obviously benefited from it. But you don't like no one's ever successful without there being service to others involved.
Yeah. And I think this is where, it's always really interesting if a lot of people will sit there and go, oh, well, they only did that because there was a huge potential for them to make, ghastly amounts of money. It's like, yeah, that may be the case. But I think at the end of the day,
Also, probably not,
what
but
I say, perfect example is like the S&C work that I do for this club, it's not paid.
same.
Like I'm quite happy to volunteer my time to provide, like it's not always going to be volunteer stuff, but I'm a big believer in, if you're in a position where you can provide service to some like an individual or a group of people and you are going to find value in providing that service, I think there is something quite rewarding to doing something without the monetary, hey, here's X amount of dollars for your time. I think there's something very rewarding from a level that not many people will like. The thing I always look at, you and I are pretty fortunate that we get to work a pretty fucking amazing job.
The best.
How many people,
Literally, my dream come true.
yeah, like how many people who work jobs, who work like corporate jobs or whatever it is, how many of those people would go and do extra work for free?
Yeah, like hardly anyone. No one. Not
Yeah,
many, if
like
any.
I,
How many dudes you know roll like this? Sorry.
not many, if any. I got you. Don't worry. Um, like, I mean, you hear of some lawyers that, they might go and work in a certain area of law, make a shitload of money there, and then they go into like pro bono work where it's like I'm literally just going to represent people for free because I want to help people that are in need of help. It's like cool,
Hmm.
but, yeah, sure, those people have gone off and made a $1 skillion doing whatever they've done previously, but they're now in a position where they're able to help people because that's genuinely why they got into their profession. You and
Yeah, and you look at the profession that they're doing. Their profession is literally helping people. It's like
mm,
they're the type of people that get into those jobs because they want to help people.
like I've known people that have worked in areas of laws where the specific firm that they have worked with, that firm is designed to help people who have been the victim of sexual abuse. Now, talk about fucking heavy work, but talk
Mm,
about fucking rewarding as all shit when things work in your favor.
hmm
Now, obviously, what we do is not anywhere near the same category as that. But I think when you look at we were talking about earlier, like these guys aren't professional, they're not paid to play, they do it because they fucking love it. You and I come in and we do this stuff because we fucking love it as well. But the
hmm
fact, how many guys are on your squad?
We've got a pretty big club
Mm.
because of how successful we are as a club, but the grade squad is 18.
Yeah. So we've got like our men's team, which is the team that I'm responsible for, and then we have our youth league team as well, which they have their own S&C coach. Um, so I think like if there are a couple of guys who play juniors and men's, but realistically, we're probably looking anywhere between sort of like 12 and 16 guys for the men's team. So a little bit smaller than you, but it's like, between that, between our coaching staff, between all the guys that show up week in, week out and provide value and service to these men that do show up to play. Like, honestly, it's quite special to be a part of it.
Yeah, I feel the
Again,
same way.
if it was the sort of thing where, I was talking to one of the guys who's still sort of on the path back to playing after a bunch of rehab stuff that he had to do after last year. But we were talking on Sunday, and he was like, "Yeah, there's a club in our division that there's essentially like just a much higher funded club, as in their coach is employed full time by the club to coach. So there's like I think 3 training sessions the club has. Every single player has one-on-one development sessions with the coach, and they almost treat it like a professional club.
Hmm.
And we were like, fuck, if we had um, access to that sort of like, if we had access to the funds to be able to do that, different story. Like, I would love it if it was the kind of thing where, they're like, hey, look, we're going to put you on a point 0.8 full time equivalent contract. You might do 30 hours a week with us, and, you know, you've got 30 hours of contracted work to get these guys in condition and get them into shape and keep them injury free and all that sort of stuff. That'd be fucking sick.
That would be
And
sick.
but I'm like, at the end of the day, like the time that I get with the boys, it's like, yeah, it's limited, but I value every fucking second and every minute I get with them. And when guys are messaging me outside going, hey, look, you know, these are the things I'm trying to navigate at the moment. Like, what's your advice? And they actually come to me and they're like, I need your help, to then be able to go, hey, well, don't worry, man, like, I got you.
Hmm.
And to see the look of relief on their face when they're like, oh, cool, I'm actually being taken care of. It's like I get to be of service to them. They then get to go and be of service to their club. And then the club gets to be of service to the community. And it's a beautiful flow and effect.
Yep, that's literally all there is. Like,
Mm,
it's all that matters in my
mm,
book. That's like numero uno.
yeah. But I was
So,
going to say, speaking of being of service,
no, wait. Did you?
no, wait.
I'm gonna start putting more footy stuff on my Instagram. But did
Mm-hmm.
you see the story that I put up the other night when I was at training? By any
Mm,
chance?
maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna start doing more of it. But holy shit, dude! So this week we got to go back to our home ground for
Mm-hmm.
training. We had to run. most of the preseason or all of the preseason out of off different fields because the Newcastle Jets use our home stadium, which is the Newcastle's Premier League soccer team.
Mm-hmm.
So Thursday night, because I couldn't go on Tuesday because I was in Bathurst, so Thursday night was my first night back at the stadium. Holy fuck, bro! It's insane, like proper insane.
Mm.
It's a full on stadium with like big lights that light up the whole field. There's and the field is, no word of a lie, dude. If you put a laser level from one side to the other, there wouldn't be a millimeter difference.
Yeah.
There's not one divot. There's not one, like the grass is cut to absolute perfection. It feels like you're walking on a tennis court.
Mm.
That's the grass, the level of grass on it. It cost, I think the guy said 40 grand to returf it that they did 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
40 grand in turf. That's the level of like field that this is. It's like they play NRL trials on it. That's the level of field. And so super cool. I get to go and do conditioning sessions on that field prior to training.
Do you take
So
lawn inspo back home?
Oh, if I could get my lawn like that, dude, holy shit. I'd sell the house just for the lawn. But I'm gonna go to training an hour early and do my conditioning sessions on that field and then have a shower in the sheds and get ready for training.
Nice.
So I'm just pumped about that because these fields, dude, it's like running on air.
Mm.
It's nice.
I like my wife.
I should. I showed Emma Borat reel last night, and she didn't think it was funny. Have you seen the one where the guy's teaching him to play golf?
Yeah, probably.
And he's like, the guy tries to give him instructions on how to play golf, and he just like does everything very literally. How the guy says like head down, so he like tries to touch his head to the ground, and then the guy's like, no, head up, so he like puts it all the way back. It's just like and then the guy's like, just watch me, and like hits the ball, and he just like watches the ball and then just starts like Forrest Gumping out onto the driving range to try and get the ball. And then he brings it back and he's like, I got one, do I get 1 point?
He's so fucking funny.
It's the best. I love Borat.
Mm. But I was going to
He
say,
might be my favorite character of all time.
oh, he'd have to be up there for sure.
Hmm.
But as I was going to say before, if we are obviously, we've just spoken of, being of service and all that sort of stuff. We got a question in the old DMs.
Yeah, someone slid in.
I reckon
and asked a really valid question that I feel like a few people could probably get some value from. So I thought we might just bring it up here, and then we can kind of touch on it a little bit, and then kind of see where it takes us. But the question essentially was, where would you, if at all, place your belt when you're bench pressing, as opposed to where would you place your belt when you're squatting and deadlifting, and how would you look to utilize the belt in those positions? So essentially the question comes down to like belt placement in the lifts and I guess belt tightness and all things belt.
Do you want to kick this off, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off. So I've been team belt and team no belt for bench.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I've used both. and I tend to lean into the no belt camp more so than the belt camp. Um, for me personally, I have come to find that not utilizing a belt on bench press allows me a better arch.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like I can get just that little bit more without the belt, and I never found that using the belt added any extra stability that I wasn't able to create without. Um, and I know that not everyone feels that way, but I know some people feel that way, which also brings me to the point that I feel like uh, belt on a bench press is very lifter dependent.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Um, Similar camp to you, I have been known to wear my belt sometimes. I have been known to not wear my belt sometimes. Um, I think for me, I don't really feel like it makes any difference in terms of how much extension I can get through my thoracic spine. The only thing I feel like it does for me is one, it kind of gives me a bit of a reference point sometimes to kind of like try and pull my shoulder blades down towards the belt to create a little bit more stability and tension through my lats. Um, I feel like it can sometimes take a little bit of pressure off my lower back if my hips are a little bit tight. So if I'm benching closer to my squat day and my hips are feeling a little bit rusty after squats, sometimes I feel like it can just alleviate a little bit of any referral that might sort of leak from the hips up into the back. But again, that's not necessarily a solved issue. It's just sort of like band-aiding a different one. Um, I think for me, is like sometimes if it does provide a sense of stability through the torso in terms of like reference points and that sort of thing, I think how you wear the belt is a little bit important as well. So it's not like you're not wearing the belt crazy tight. It's literally just light enough that you've got pressure around the midsection and you can kind of go, yep, it's there. Obviously, because in terms of obviously like there's no axial loading like there is in a squat and a deadlift. You don't need to try and worry about trying to make the trunk as round and robust. It's like you can kind of cruise a little bit more because the emphasis is on thoracic extension. Um, so again, as you said, like very much lifter dependent, but even just more so like day dependent. Like again, some days I'm like, yeah, cool, belt feels fucking great, and other days I'm like, get the fuck off me.
Yeah. One thing I found when I did start to use it on someone's advice was like
Mm.
you know bench with a belt. It'll add heaps to your bench press. You'll feel a lot more stable. And I found when I first put it on, it did make me feel a lot more stable initially. But I kind of put that down to the fact that it gave me a tactile reference on just how to brace properly during the bench, which that's what was actually causing the increased stability, not that belt itself. So once I learned how to actually breathe and brace during a bench press properly, the belt itself just kind of became a bit of a mute point. And
Mm.
then once I took it off, I didn't find a decrease in my stability at all. I actually just found it more comfortable to get into position without. And because I knew how to breathe and brace during a bench press properly, I just did that regardless of if the belt was there or not. And I had the same level of stability.
So I'm just
Um,
having a
so
look at my heaviest bench videos. So the 160 PB that I hit back in 2022, that was with a belt on and was quite an easy rep. The 165 after that was with a belt on, that was quite a challenging rep. And then if I fast forward to um, my best double at 155, that was with a belt on as well. if I then fast forward to the benching that I did just before breakthrough, I hit a 162 bench with no belt. It was a little bit slower, but I missed 170 with no belt. So obviously,
That's all
I'm
that counts.
yeah. Like if I can't bench 170 without a belt, would I have hit it with a belt? Probably.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Um,
You could basically just say that you've benched 170 with a belt.
well, I mean, I've benched 170 um, with a block, and that was with a belt. So I mean, like, case
Yeah.
closed.
Yeah.
But
Belt.
for me, it
Everyone
is
benches with a belt.
yeah. Like I think the terminology used of like the tactile reference point is probably the bigger thing for me. Um, and I think for me as well, it kind of gives me the feedback to go and not extend through the lumbar spine too much because I'm like, no, I'm not trying to extend through the belt. I'm trying to extend from the belt up to my shoulders, and that I think gives me a nice reference point.
Yeah. Because if we break it down logically, in that position, that belt, there's physically no way, or like physically? Yeah, anyway, logically, like there's no logical way that that belt can create any more stability for a bench press
Mm.
other than being a tactile cue to make you do the thing that will actually help your bench press. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I know
It's
exactly
like
what you mean.
it's like using knee wraps for a bench press. Like using knee wraps for a bench press isn't going to like make your leg drive more powerful, but like it might make your legs feel more stable.
I mean,
Do you get the
like
reference?
we know that people love booty bands. I've seen people
Uh,
do bench press with a booty band on because
so
it's
have
like
I.
oh, I can engage my hips better, and because my hips are engaged better, I can get better tension through my lats, and then that provides more stability across the board.
Yeah,
But
so
if
it's
you
not the booty band that's making you bench more. It's the fact that the tactile cue of the booty band is making you do the thing that you should be doing anyway that's
yeah
going to make you bench more.
yeah
Yeah. So it's just kind of uncovering like if your bench does feel better with a belt, why is that? And if you don't want to wear the belt, like this is the thing, like this person mentioned that their bench feels really good without the belt and was like, maybe I'm just belting wrong. No, like if your bench feels great without a belt and it feels shit with a belt, definitely don't wear the belt.
I would almost say the same for deadlifts though.
100%. I
Like
definitely would say the same for deadlifts.
I have a
I would
10
say the
kilo
same. I would
difference.
say the same for everything. Like it's
If a belt
if
throws you off, it's not that you like there's no rule that says you have to wear a belt.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how many people are going to tell you that their squats feel better without a belt? Probably not many. But if
Mm.
someone came to you and said, Ben, I can squat 350 without my belt and it feels fucking awesome. But as soon as I put my belt on, I can only squat 300 and it feels like garbage. Like, you're definitely not going to tell them, suck it up, man. You're just squatting with the belt wrong. You've got to learn how to do it, are you? You're just going to be like,
Obviously,
well, dude, like that's sick. Fucking throw the belt in the bin and just never squat with the belt again. Like 350 plus, here we come.
mm.
Like that's common sense, right? So I just think sometimes we can fall into this trap of thinking that there's things that we have to do when in reality, like there's not that many like hard and fast rules. And the ones that are in the rule book, and everything else that we do is just like making us better at those things. And if you're doing something that feels better, just keep doing that.
This is not a just for everyone listening. This is not the green light for you to go and start taking steroids.
Yes, it is. I, like I
But
don't know
Nick, they
about you,
make me
but
feel fantastic.
yeah, like I wasn't wearing a squat plug because I felt super self conscious about it. But then like my squats just feel heaps better when I do. So it's like,
Did you say
of
they
course
felt
I'm
even
going.
better when you upgraded to like the extra large one?
Yeah, like the more bigger the better.
Yeah.
Size matters.
What color did you go for?
Orange.
I thought you would have gone like the bigger, blacker.
Nah, see, I wanted red because red's fast, but then I didn't want to like worry that every time I like pulled it out, I was like, oh, is that blood? So I went orange. So it was like
There's a bit of
still
differentiation.
kind of fast, but I can also tell if I blew something out.
Yep. Did you like the little sound effect I made when it came out for you?
Yeah, I did.
Just for
But
again.
yeah, do you have anything else to? How about we go through belt placement?
So again, this is an interesting one, right? So if we're looking at bench, I would kind of be like, yeah, over the belly button makes sense.
Mm.
You see a lot of people in like squats and deadlift place it up really high.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it.
You don't?
No.
I have my belt higher in my squat than I do in my deadlift,
Mm-hmm. Like I've seen
personally.
some people like in their conventional deadlifts wear their belt like,
Under their nipples.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
I've seen it too.
mm,
I
like,
know why they do it.
why?
Because someone famous does it.
But why?
Well, I don't know why he does it, but I know why they do it.
Is it just because he did it?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
It annoys me.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with thoracic stability.
Do you know what else helps to stabilize the thoracic?
Bracing.
Yeah. Do you know what else?
Lats.
Yeah. Do you know what else? Big fucking erectors.
Yes.
Quit being a little bitch and just build a bigger back.
Yeah, I like my belt. To be honest, I kind of like beltless deadlifts.
Well, I mean, like my best beltless pull is 280. My best belted pull is 290, and the 280 looked and felt significantly better. Like my best beltless triple is 270. My best belted double is 275.
You wear a 13 mil belt though, don't you?
Yes.
I can't deadlift in a 13 mil belt. It's too thick.
Can't handle the thick ones, can you, Nick?
No, I can't. No, I really don't like deadlifting in a 13 mil belt.
Mm,
I much prefer a 10 mil. And I I much prefer a 10 mil, and I much like the more worn in the better, so that it doesn't like dig in. It just like you can't even really feel it.
hmm
And I wear it significantly looser than what you would think. Like when I deadlift, I buckle up. I can actually fit my whole hand into the front of my belt
mm.
before I brace.
But to be honest, like the one thing that kind of frustrates me is the fact that people will like clamp themselves into such a small position within their belt. It's like the belt isn't designed to replace your brace. It's designed to like support it.
Yeah, and I've worked with a couple of my lifters over the last probably 6 months
Mm,
on loosening the belt because they had it too tight and it was actually disadvantaging their brace. It,
mm,
it was making their brace worse, not better, because it was just too tight.
mm,
Um, but that's also, I mean, it's hard. Like if you're used to like clamping yourself into a really tight belt, that feels very like artificially stable
mm.
because of how tight that thing is like corsetting into your midsection. So that's a tough process sometimes to trust in the ability to loosen that off and feel how loose it actually feels, but then create that stability internally via really good bracing mechanics,
Mm.
and have the belt there just as more of a superficial tactile cue of like, yes, this is like, I'm doing this properly, this is going to be okay. That can be a hard barrier to cross if you're not used to it. So if someone is feeling like potentially the belt, that maybe they're wearing their belt a little bit too tight, and I would say like, if you can't put your hand down the front of your belt, it's probably a little bit too tight.
Mm. I'd say so too.
Um, so if you use that as a metric for like gauging tightness, I would say more often than not, I see people have it a little bit too tight.
The other thing I would use as like a really applicable piece of things, like if you can't actually like take enough air in to set your brace, it's too tight.
Yeah. Here's a good one. After I finish my squat or deadlift, once I go and let my brace out, my belt falls down. From like, it falls down from where it is.
Mm.
So I hold it up. You'll see before I deadlift. If you go back and watch my deadlift videos on Instagram, you can see that I hold my belt at the front and then and take my air 2 or 3 times while I'm bracing and filling up that space. Because if I don't hold my belt in position, it just falls down below my belly button.
Mm.
So it's too low. So I have to hold it in position, take the air, and then it stays in position. And then once it stays in position, that's how I know that I've got my bracing mechanics right and I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And then I use that belt to kind of push my hips. I use my hands are already there. So then I put my fingers on my pelvis and push my hips back to initiate the hinge.
Mm.
That's kind of the process that I go through pre deadlift, but it stems from the fact of having to hold the belt there. Otherwise it falls down.
Mm.
Yeah. So what I was back to kind of the thought process that I was going through before is, if you are kind of thinking like maybe the belt might be too tight, an off season when things are a little bit lighter, or post comp when things are a little bit lighter, is a really good opportunity to start to loosen things off, where it's not like in the midst of prep when shit's really heavy and you're like, oh fuck, I can't do it now. I wouldn't suggest doing it then.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that's generally the time or place to change much,
Yeah.
unless it's like, oh fuck, like we're in a bit of emergency, we have to, and we're forced to. I would always sort of go, well, if we can spend a bit of time to actually plan that sort of that alteration, that's probably where it's going to be best to do so, not necessarily doing it reactively. So yeah, I would be looking more at post comp, off season, that sort of thing, to implement changes and then utilize those changes as, you know, a focus in a lot of the other comp, well, not comp programs necessarily, but programs leading into some more challenging areas.
Yeah. But we really do appreciate the DMs that we get from you guys talking about this stuff. It's, Ben and I are massive meatheads, and we just kind of really like to talk about lifting. And in the vein of the previous kind of conversation that we were having, is we do really love to give back as much as possible. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have any questions, or you want any help or advice or whatnot, we do have that Bars Loaded Instagram page, and the DMs are always open there. Both Ben and I have access to those DMs, and we're in there daily, chatting to people and giving video feedback and advice where applicable. So don't be afraid to DM, either Ben or I personally. If you just fucking hate one of us and like the other one, just DM us personally. Or if you don't mind which one of us gets back to you, just DM that Bars Loaded page, and we're always happy to give out coaching advice in there, and then if we feel like it's going to be applicable to other people as well, we'll probably bring it up here with, if you don't mind us doing that, we'll always ask for consent, because that's the kind of guys that we are.
Obviously.
Obviously. Did you have anything else to add on belts?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it. Like, yeah, just like actually understand why you're using a belt. Understand the application and around like what it should realistically be doing. And that's not just because someone on Instagram has said, hey, do this.
Yeah, actually, speaking of understanding the application, it's probably good to mention your belt is not saving your lower back.
It is mine.
No, your brace is. Your brace is.
Yeah. But it could be fun.
Your belt is not saving your lower back. Try and reframe the mindset of like, your belt isn't doing the work for you. Your belt is a tactile cue of you doing the work to create the internal stability yourself.
Yeah.
Because so often we see absolute garbage information put out there about lifting belts by in the community, the Fitspo community.
The worst bunch.
The worst bunch. Yeah. So just be mindful of that. It's not doing the work for you. And if you try and make it do the work for you, you're probably going to put yourself in a really bad position. Hypertrophy.
Let's get fucking swole.
Speaking of positions, I've got no idea what positions, how that segues into hypertrophy. But like, I feel like if you just say that, it
positions.
Yeah, if you just say like speaking of, and then like it kind of just turns into a segue, even if there isn't one. Like, speaking of positions, let's talk about hypertrophy. It makes no sense, but like, if you don't think about it, it makes sense.
Pretty much like the story of my life.
Yeah, if you don't think about it at all, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you do think about it, you'll be in the corner crying. Be like, oh, what have I done?
Make it stop. Make it stop, please.
It's fine, guys. We have good times.
Sometimes.
We have good times 60% of the time, all of the time.
I think the hypertrophy conversation is a really valuable one because, one, because we haven't done it before, and two, because being jacked is good, and three, because I feel like a lot of people miss the mark on like how they're getting jacked or like why they're getting jacked and like how to do it effectively, efficiently, and like just at all, really.
I have a question that I want to pose to you.
Pose it. Pose down.
If, let's say, you have an individual, right? And for example, they're like, hey, I want a specific body part to be jacked and be massive, but they don't want to train that body part directly.
Mm-hmm.
How would one go about causing hypertrophy to a muscle group or a specific area that they don't actually want to train directly?
Side injections would be a good one.
Okay.
Synthol.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's definitely not something that I would recommend, but it is a thing in professional bodybuilding. It's definitely a thing. It's not something that I would ever do or ever advocate for. I know what you're getting at, and that's why I said that.
What am I getting at, Nick?
Well, you're getting at the fact that I don't like training arms, and I don't want to train arms, but I want big arms.
Yep.
And I know, Ben, fuck you. I know what you're doing.
Uh,
I know what you're doing. I want big arms, but I don't want to train arms because it's lame.
but it's not.
Bro, it's so lame.
How?
Do you like training arms?
I fucking love it, man.
See, that's the thing. So many people say that. What? How? Do you know how many sets of arms I've loved doing in my life? Zero. I fucking hate it. I hate every single rep. I honestly thoroughly disenjoy it.
That's because you have small, puny biceps.
It is. Do you know why I hate it?
Why?
Because I've never had a pump in my arms ever. Not a single time.
Okay, let me
And
ask
do
you.
you know why? Do you know why I haven't?
Because you don't know how to
Because
train them properly.
because you can't get a pump in fucking humerus. I don't have fucking biceps or triceps. I've got a humerus that connects to my elbow.
Yeah,
That's
because you
it.
don't train your fucking arms.
Yeah.
You can't have a muscle if you don't fucking train it. Where
Oh, it's there.
if you train it, it will develop, and then you can experience the glory that is a delicious bicep pump.
Yeah. I don't know.
So
I need
I
to
was gonna
train
say,
them.
when was the last time you actually trained arms properly, or at least attempted to?
I never, not a
Okay,
single time.
cool.
I've
So
had I've had arms in my program, and like
when
Will, Will, if you listen to this, I apologize,
he never did
but
them.
like I skipped every single set.
Okay, so I'm just. This is where like I'm gonna kind of like put a bit of a spotlight on you for now. In the last 12 months, your skill set as a coach has improved dramatically.
Thank you.
Now, this is where I'm going to challenge you to put that improved skill set to work and actually figure out a way to train arms that doesn't feel lame and tacky, but actually has applicable carryover to hypertrophy.
Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I'll tell you why I don't like training arms.
Cool. Hit me.
It's because, and this is a shit excuse, but this is the actual reason.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in my teens,
Mm-hmm.
I prior to this happening, I trained arms at least once a week, and my arms weren't horrible. They've never been huge, but they were not like they are now. Like they looked like arms of a guy that trained arms.
Mm-hmm.
When I tore my pec, um, so you know this. I know that you know this, but for the people that don't know this, the the pec attaches down the bicipital groove, and it kind of like holds, like all of that kind of ties in together. So the bicep attachment, the pec attachment, all the kind of all the lat attachment all sit in that same groove, right? Mine popped, my pec tearing and me never getting that repaired has meant that bicep, the tendon, the bicep tendon that goes up into that bicipital groove, pops out of that groove. It's what causes this shoulder to be so fucky all the time. It's what I have extreme scar tissue in this pec, and the top half of this bicep is like super deformed looking, and it fucking hurts because it pops in and out. I can literally like get this bicep tendon and pop it back into the groove, and it feels good. And then if I externally rotate my shoulder too much, it pops back out and it feels really fucking weird. So that's been my excuse to not train arms, because when I do it, it feels really fucking weird. There you go. That's the real reason why.
Have you seen the movie The Wedding Singer?
Yeah, like 100 years ago.
So I'm going to quote that based on the conversation that we had the other day. Once again, information that would have been useful to me yesterday.
Yeah, so that's the real reason. Like, I can show you. see. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
See that?
Mm-hmm.
That should be in there. That should be in there like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it just feels really fucking gross all the time. And that's what fucks that shoulder a lot.
Valid excuse.
Yeah. So, and I know it's kind of half valid and half not valid because I know at least one other person that has this exact same injury that has jacked arms
Mm-hmm.
and still trains arms. So it's not like an excuse, but it's a reason why I neglected it for so long because I didn't have the knowledge that I have now and it just felt shitty, so I didn't do it. And then it got to the point where it was so lagging that I felt like an idiot training them because it's like, well, I could go and squat 300 or I could go and bicep curl tens. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go and stand in the corner and bicep curl tens because I feel like a fucking moron and people won't think I'm strong. So I'm going to go do the thing that actually makes me look like I lift. And then it just kind of compounded effect on top of that. And then I just always ended up skipping them.
Cool. Well, the cat's out of the bag now. So, guess what you're going to start doing?
Well, that'll be up to our guest tomorrow.
Oh, you pulled the pin on that, did you?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Fuck yeah.
So, but that is actually something that I want to that I'll mention that I want to work on. So, among other things. But yeah, he'll be looking after things for me.
How exciting.
I'm pretty excited about it, dude. I'm really excited about it.
It's the first time I think I've heard you mention you're excited for training in a while. So, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's going to be very different. That's for sure.
Yeah.
To what well, it's going to be different to what I'm used to of recent years. It'll be very similar to what I've done in the past when I felt my absolute best.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to feeling like that again.
Nice.
But if we go back to hypertrophy,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of, I do want to talk about hypertrophy from a programming perspective, and like give people some takeaways that they can start to think about when they're looking to maybe go through a bit of an hypertrophy phase. So, do you have some specific things that you look at when you're looking at adding hypertrophy, like a hypertrophy block to someone's program, say?
I do. So, obviously, because this is, a fairly powerlifting orientated podcast, I'm going to sort of talk about how I will approach a hypertrophy phase for, say, powerlifter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the main thing that I really want to kind of touch on is hypertrophy just doesn't mean just doing your comp spec lifts for 8+ reps.
No, probably not.
No. For me, like I rant and rave a lot about understanding the difference between active and passive ranges. I will always put an emphasis on we are probably going to do variations of your comp lift. So it might be high bar, might be safety bar, might even be a front squat. And the objective is teaching you how to hold active tension throughout the range that you're working with to keep tension on the muscle fibers that we're trying to target. Now, the sort of caveat that I like to address is squats aren't necessarily the best hypertrophy selection for legs. Bench isn't necessarily the best hypertrophy selection for pecs, and deadlifts aren't necessarily the best for glutes and hamstrings. Squats fantastic at adding mass to legs. Bench can be a fantastic exercise for adding mass to the chest. And then deadlifts can be a fantastic exercise for adding mass to the legs, the back, and the body in general. They're not specific targeted exercises, though, as far as I'm concerned. But then what I will tend to do is then filter in other exercises afterwards that then are a little bit more suitable to specific muscle groups. So, for example, a leg session for me, if I was doing a more hypertrophy focused block, would probably be a couple of high intensity sets of squats because my skill level is high enough that I can actually push output on that movement. So it might be, say, 2 sets of 4 to 6 reps on a high bar squat. If you can squat properly, that should be a fucking hard section of your program. I'm then going to probably go on to something like a hack squat. Again, whether it's a hack squat, whether it's a leg press, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things as far as I'm concerned. I personally will prefer a hack squat because it still has me squatting. The powerlifter in me loves that pattern, wants to continue it. So I'm just like, fuck it, I'll do it. I'm then probably going to do something like a leg extension and bias a shortened position and really just pump a fuckload of blood into my quads. And then I'm probably going to look for some sort of unilateral movement, like either a walking lunge, a Bulgarian, something of the sorts. And then I would probably want to look at finishing with something like a kneeling leg extension, where I'm actually taking the quad through more of a lengthened range of motion and trying to get a bit of length back to that muscle. Now, that session there in particular will have your quads feeling like they are hilarious circus-sized balloons.
Beautiful.
That's kind of how I like to approach hyper. Again, the caveat that I will put in here as well is like, we're not bodybuilding coaches. So as far as I kind of see, we deal with a lot of strength athletes. If the objective is building mass to help support squats, that is the objective.
Mm-hmm.
You look at how bodybuilders will approach their training. They might start off with leg extensions, and then they might go into walking lunges, and then they might go into some squats. For us, it's kind of the reverse. We always want to utilize the loads that have, the exercises that have kind of like the highest skill and the high output options, and push those harder first, because that's where we're going to get the adaptations that are a little bit more relevant to you and I, or to the clients that we work with. Like, I remember a little while ago, I was talking to Dean McKillop on social. He posted a photo of him like one day after like an upper body session, and he just looked fucking so jacked. And I talk to Dean every once in a while, and I responded to it, and I was like, fuck, I'm like, when I grow up, I want to look like fucking Dean. And his response was, stop training like a powerlifter. And it's like, fair. But this is also where it's like, if we're chasing strength as a adaptation, we have a avenue in which we need to go. If we're chasing just pure hypertrophy, it's a different avenue. If we are then kind of going strength and hypertrophy, there's a little bit of a blending between the two. But again, they're quite different outcomes that we are searching for. So again, like any sort of approach, the objective outcome needs to be matched with the objective approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. I would take a much similar approach and do take a much similar approach with programming when we're looking at it from a hypertrophy standpoint, and have done with clients both powerlifting and not non-powerlifting specific. I always tend to bias towards having a skill component, a strength component, sorry, to the program, where where I'm looking for an expression of strength with a barbell,
Mm-hmm.
just because that's my bias as a coach, and I think that it. I feel like the stronger you are, the more hypertrophic potential you possess, and the more hypertrophy you accumulate, the more strength potential you possess. So there's a symbiotic relationship
Fuck, that's a
that
nice phrase.
it's
Oh,
beautiful, isn't it?
dude,
That just rolled off the tongue so well.
that was fucking sexy.
Thank you.
Please
I'm proud
continue.
of that one.
Please continue. Whisper sweet somethings in my ear again.
They live in a symbiotic relationship, whereas this whole like trend of power building, I fucking hate that term so much because it's just like, oh, you're telling me you're trying to get stronger and bigger at the same time. Like, I just call that training. Like, that's just training properly.
Mm.
That's what you're doing. um so it's like, yeah, so if you're not power building, what are you just trying to like get stronger, but you don't want to build any muscle? Like, is that what you're trying to do? Like, that doesn't actually make any sense to me at all. Um, and like, if you're a bodybuilder, like if you look at most really jacked bodybuilders, they're really fucking strong as well because they have more muscle to contract to produce strength. So, and we look at if we look at what hypertrophy is and what are the factors that come into play with hypertrophy, there's three main factors, or there's three main pillars of hypertrophy, being mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. And out of the three, there's one clear winner that contributes to at a much greater percentage than the other two, and that's mechanical tension.
Yeah.
So if you're sacrificing mechanical tension for more volume, meaning if you're sacrificing load to do more volume, you're missing the mark. What we want to do is we want to create as much tension on fibers as possible. So lift as heavy a weight as you can while keeping that weight on the muscle fibers that you're trying to hypertrophy, and that's what's going to get you the best results. So like high intensity, probably less sets than you think you need to do. And there's a great saying that I heard recently, and I can't remember exactly who said it, and I can't. This is definitely not my saying, and I can't take credit for it. And I can't remember exactly who said it, but it's one of three people, and I can't pinpoint who said it, so I'm not going to mention any of them. But I just understand it's not mine. I'm not taking credit for it. But in the volume, actually, I do know who said it. It was our friend of the show, Mac. Shout out, Mac. Put up a story that said, in the absence of good programming, or in the absence of intelligent programming, there's always volume.
Mm.
You can get really jacked with probably a quarter of the sets that you think you need to do if you move properly and load them effectively and take them close enough to failure.
Yeah.
Thoughts, feelings, concerns?
Well, I mean, you know my approach to training. I froth low volume, high intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I feel like if you get someone in who's like half decent at lifting, and when I say half decent, I'm like, I don't really care about the overall load necessarily. I'm looking more so at like their technical proficiency. I would rather be like, hey, cool, you got one, maybe two sets.
Mm-hmm.
Push it fucking hard, go home.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only time that I ever really like to be like, hey, look, for example, I've got one of the girls I coach, and for the sake of repatterning a movement that we were having some technical issues with, she had 10 sets of three.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather that approach for a skill sort of refinement protocol rather than say 4 sets of 8.
100%.
We went from 10 sets of
I,
3
I
on.
I quite literally programmed that today. It was 8 sets of 2, but similar
Well,
as
she's
as the second.
now on 7 sets of 2. So her volume has essentially halved, which, there's still 7 sets. That's a lot of sets of squats, but it's still a good opportunity for her to practice the technique over and over and over and over again. She's still going to get better. There's still potential for a degree of hypertrophy, but probably not a huge amount. Obviously, because her proximity to failure probably just isn't anywhere near enough. But if it gets her better from a skill perspective, and then we can train it a bit harder down the track, then we can start to really capitalize on some of those hypertrophy outcomes.
Yeah,
But
and I
I,
think that's a really important distinction to make, is proximity to failure being a big driver of hypertrophy as well.
yeah,
So if if you're doing 2 sets, if you're doing, say you're doing, let's just go like 3 by 10,
hmm
right? Standard 3 by 10. Everyone's had a program in their life that has 3 by 10 of something. If you're doing 3 by 10 and you're doing all three of those sets, or an RPE 7,
hmm
probably zero of those reps are causing a hypertrophic response.
yeah, but
If you're
this,
if you're doing all three of those sets of 10 to an RPE 9, meaning 1 rep left prior to failure, maybe maybe three of those reps per set would be classed as like effective reps, I think is the term that's going around at the moment in
hmm
the Fitspo world. So that means out of those 3 sets, you've done six, four, maybe 6 effective reps that are actually causing a response. So if you're not training hard, you're just not going to get the result, regardless of like how much work you do.
yeah,
Um, and so then when we go back to looking at those 3 pillars of hypertrophy, being mechanical tension being the main driver of hypertrophy, we need to take the reps close to failure to create that mechanical tension on the fibers that we're looking to grow. And then maybe later in the session, we might look at like topping up the hypertrophy bank with some metabolic stress, which is like the pump, right? Like I always kind of like to maybe finish a hypertrophy session with a bit of a pump, because it doesn't contribute zero to hypertrophy,
mm,
but it's not the main driver, but it also feels good.
yeah,
So it's like if we can then program in some like pump work maybe at the end of a session that isn't going to detract from the main work being like the heavy mechanical tension work that we're doing to drive hypertrophy, we can gain maybe a little bit of a hypertrophic response from the mechanical from the thing that I just said,
metabolic.
the metabolic stress. We can gain athlete buy-in because it feels good to get a pump at the end of a session,
hmm
and we know that they're going to get through the heavy shit so that they can get a pump. Like that can also be a really good way to drive some hypertrophy through athletes,
Yeah, no, I
I
think
find.
think this is also, we sort of like briefly touched on it before of like, the approach and the outcomes that we're looking for when it comes to a strength or skill adaptation is going to be a little bit different to the approach that we're going to take if hypertrophy is the adaptation we're after. And I think this is where, and again, this is where I'm going to say that I think a few people in the powerlifting space at the moment are kind of missing the part of where they're just trying to thrash their main lift to an RPE 9 every single week because they're trying to train it for hypertrophy. And it's like, if you're trying to build a skill acquisition component, like the skill stuff is not necessarily the thing where we have to push that for hypertrophy. Like, sure, can there be potential?
It's often not.
It's like,
In fact, I would say it almost never is
no,
the best option.
because you want to use a skill movement to set yourself up for expression of skill, not necessarily expression of strength. Like, there will be times and places, obviously, where it's like, hey, we're setting, new rep maxes, and that's where we kind of want to go, yep, cool. Are we able to facilitate an increase in baseline? But if the objective is to be able to push a heavier 1RM, it's like you need to set up the ability to express the skill and express the strength. That
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean hypertrophy training.
No, they're two distinctly different things.
Yeah. Um, Go on.
I was just going to say that the other thing to consider as well is what like we're powerlifters, right? We really love lifting heavy, and we really love lifting heavy barbells. That's that's like our passion. That's why we are driven to powerlifting. That's why everyone that's listening to us, it's a powerlifter. When I say that, they're like, "Fuck yeah!" Like you see those memes where it's like guys will see this and say, "Fuck yeah." It's like powerlifters will hear barbell and say, "Fuck yeah!" Like that's what we like, and that's cool. I'm with you. I'm one of you, one of us. I'm there with you. But just because we love it doesn't mean it's the best tool for the job. It's a tool for a job. It's not a tool for this job. The tool for this job is I will generally always for a powerlifter program a comp lift or a close deviation from comp lift as like the main movement of the day because we're refining skill, we're building skill, we're strengthening positions, whatever that may be. That's the that's the aim for that part of the program. Then I'll generally move into like an integration pattern where I want to then like integrate like muscle function into the movement pattern that I'm looking for. That'll then kind of be like the supporting or the like accessory movement, the secondary movement. And then if I'm then looking at hypertrophy from there, it's going to be much more of a targeted approach. Like I'm not going to program you squats for hypertrophy. I'll program you hack squat, leg press, pendulum squat, like whatever those things are, like what those patterns are going to be really good for hypertrophy.
Mm-hmm.
Great, that's what we're going to do. We're not going to do deadlifts for hypertrophy. We might do RDLs, we might do hamstring curls, we might do glute ham raises, whatever we do. That's kind of where we're going to fall in terms of that. Then we're going to get a pump. Then we're going to go home and feel really good about ourselves.
Yeah.
But the you need to treat the hypertrophy stuff with the same intent that you treat the main stuff.
Mm.
What I often see people that love the strength stuff do is come in and go like dick to the wall with the main movement, have like 50% left in the gas tank, and they give 30% of that to their secondary movement because that's usually only a few standard deviations from their comp lift, so that's still really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, "Oh, now I've got some seated rows, or I've got some lat pull down, some single arm rows, and some bicep and tricep stuff," and they just like talk through their sets while they're doing that, or just like fuck ass around, or just like use momentum as much as they can because it's like, oh, I just got to get this done, and it's really unenjoyable. But it's like, if you want to get the most out of it, you really need to treat it with the same respect as what you treat the barbell. No, I'm not doing arms. I refuse. God damn it. If you bring up arms tomorrow on this podcast, I'm going to be so disappointed.
You just ruined my surprise. I was literally going to be
Fuck.
like, hello, good sir. My question is, if you have a client who says that they want big arms, but they don't want to train arms, how do you get them big arms? Hint, the potential client is in this meeting, and it is not me.
I bought hamstring sliders. You know the
The
hamstring
discs, yeah,
things, the discs. Yeah, I bought those in preparation
nice,
for some quality hamstring work.
delightful.
Have you used those before?
Yeah,
They're sick, hey.
yeah.
They're so underutilized.
With like, and this is always the funny thing that I find as well. They're underutilized within like the powerlifting realm, but if you do any
Yeah.
sort of like sports performance, like they pretty much exist in like all gyms.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, dude, I think so many powerlifters could gain such a huge benefit from utilizing them when they're programming.
I think if like you're doing the ones where it's like you go into like a hip bridge and then you
Hmm.
extend
Yeah.
out and then keep the
Hmm.
hips extended and then drag back in, that'll do some damage to the hamstrings in a really fucking beautiful way.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, you talk about like bulletproofing hamstrings. That's like
101.
that's up there. That's up there in top tier
Mm.
territory.
Mm.
What is something that powerlifters use a lot of
Excuses.
other than trend? No excuses. Yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, today just wasn't my day. My glutes were asleep.
Yeah, fucking do that with your glutes being asleep. That won't happen. Want to wake those up? Get some hamstring sliders.
Mm. Stab your eyeballs with Tren.
Do you, do you want to run through a? I know you kind of did a typical, like a sample
Like,
leg session. I think it
yeah.
was. Do you want to run through like a sample upper body
Oof.
session that you might
Yes,
program?
yes, yes, yes. So
Rattle one off.
I would go again if we're talking like a powerlifter who's doing a bit of upper body hypertrophy. I would be looking at something like a mid grip bench press.
Oh god, mid grip bench press is god tier.
Yep. So mid grip bench press again for like I would say probably like somewhere between like two sets of like 6 to 8. So a couple of
Mhm.
reps in there to get the engine churning. I would then go over and I would do probably like two sets of like 5 to 8 dips. So like heavy,
Mhm.
but still something you can press out.
Mhm.
I would then take you over to like a 30-degree incline dumbbell press. And I would go two sets of like 10 to 12.
Mhm.
For arms, again, if we're thinking about like integrating like overall shoulder function, I would superset a high cable bicep curl with like an overhead tricep um, cable extension. If shoulder function isn't an issue, I would probably look at like um, a dual cable bicep curl on the little compact cable machines, and I would,
Facing away from the stack.
yep, and pair it with like just a stock standard tricep push down.
So like elbow behind your body for the bicep curl, facing away from the
Yep,
stack.
so going through like
Yep.
a lengthened
Like
position.
a drag curl type thing,
Yep,
for lack of a better term.
and then I would probably finish off with like some sort of pec fly at the end, like whether it's a cable or a dumbbell or like a pec deck, just something juicy like that to get some TLC through the pecs, and that
Hmm.
would probably be like a pretty easy program to, well, not easy, but as in like that would be like a staple for me.
The Yep, that's a
Again,
pretty nice session.
it's not necessarily ticking every single box that we would need, but I feel like if we're looking at hypertrophy for a strength athlete, I feel like that ticks a lot of boxes.
Yep. Here's another one for you.
Mhm.
This is kind of going on like the opposite side of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go something along the lines of, if we're sticking with the same style of programming, say like an athlete in the same period of the programming cycle, same athlete, secondary bench day or second upper body day of the week, we could go something along the lines of a Larsen press,
Mm-hmm.
couple of sets, or actually scrap that. Let's go. Let's make the first movement more of a skill component. So let's go. Say this lifter has issues keeping tension on the chest, like sinks into the chest a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
loses upper back position. Let's go like 6 sets of 2 of paused spoto press with 1 minute break, or like going on like starting each set on the minute. So
Every minute.
the remainder of the minute is your rest. So that's going to be a load limiter. But we want to be using about 75 to 80% for those reps. So it's going to be quite challenging. It'll challenge position, but we want to like power through them. And then that'll be like your main movement. And then we're going to go from there. Let's go cable pullovers,
Mm-hmm.
single arm dumbbell row,
Mm-hmm.
high cable bicep curl, and overhead cable tricep extension, and rear delt fly.
Nice. I say, if I was going to choose a secondary day, do you want to know what my secondary day would be?
No.
Cool. Good chat. I'll see you later.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So
let me know.
I would go a close grip incline bench press. I would go I would do, say, 2 sets of like 6 to 8. I would go 2 sets of AMRAP chin ups. I would then go a chest supported T-bar row with a neutral grip. I would probably go something like a incline easy bar skull crusher.
Mm-hmm. Not a bad option.
Mm. I would probably be looking at more dips because dips are king. And then probably just like some rear delt and bicep work in there.
Yep. Yeah, I love rear delt work. Not That's definitely not too dissimilar to mine. I would make the caveat to say that on my program, my warm up would be chin ups supersetted with dumbbell Z press. So I'd tick those boxes anyway.
Nice.
That would be I'd do a couple of sets of that as my like functional warm up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd kind of hit that in there. It wouldn't be as loaded, obviously, but it'd still kind of get that stimulus. And then I'd move into the other stuff that I said.
Delightful.
That's a fun session. Those are both pretty good sessions. Look at us go. We could do this for a living.
Could we?
I don't know. I reckon we could. Does anyone want to pay us? We could do it, I reckon.
Look at me go, Ma. I'm doing it. Look Ma, at me go hands.
I like programs.
It's nice. I like. That's my wife.
Strength coach. I'm just going to start saying random shit in Borat voice.
This here is Nick. He is number 3 strength coach in all of Kazakhstan.
I'm gonna go get my coffee in the morning, and they'll be like, "Can I get you anything?" And I'll work with zero context. I'll just be like, "Old cap." Lots of chocolate.
You walk in the back. Oh, nice! Look at me, king of the castle, king of the castle.
Oh, coffee smell good. Making me want to poop.
You'll do a poo. You'll take a photo, post it on your story, and be like, "Nice, it's nice. I like."
Cool. Do you have anything more on hypertrophy?
Yeah, I do actually. One more thing to finish off with before I can shut my app. Arm hypertrophy is actually the greatest form of hypertrophy training, and anyone that doesn't train arms is a little bitch.
Look, okay. Do you know why? You know me well enough to know that not much that I do is uncalculated.
I know.
So I'm just gonna tell you because I know that you know there's a reason why I brought it up.
Yep.
So maybe explaining my thought process might be an interesting kind of discussion to kind of like lead into letting these people fucking go and stop listening to us because no doubt they're fucking sick of our voices by now. But my thought process is the reason why I started thinking about it is I've always wanted bigger arms, but I've never wanted bigger arms enough to actually train arms for all of the reasons that I brought up earlier. My thought process of late has been my shoulder feeling like shit. I know has to do with the pec injury and all of the resulting shit that has happened because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Not entirely, but a large portion of, and then the compensations that occur on the back of that all kind of compound to that shoulder just kind of always perennially feeling like shit. So my thought process has kind of stemmed from me troubleshooting within my own brain around ways that I could potentially make this shoulder feel better. One of the ways that I've come up with is if I have bigger, stronger bicep, does that then contribute to stronger, more stable glenohumeral joint, which then make Nick shoulder hurt less?
Mm-hmm.
Answer obviously being yes. Question being, does Nick care enough to train bicep? Answer being no. So then leading to Nick mentioning to Ben that he doesn't like training arms, knowing that Ben loves making fun of Nick and he will peer pressure him into training arms,
Me?
resulting in
Peer
Nick
pressure someone? No.
resulting in shoulder feel nice.
I like.
So I've kind of reverse engineered this whole scenario
Was that
into
reverse
you
engineered or like injured? Engineered?
injured. I've basically concocted this whole situation to make you peer pressure me into doing the thing that I know will make my shoulder feel better, but that I don't want to do.
So do you remember the conversation we had on Instagram where I'm like, hey, the supportive approach hasn't worked here. Now I'm just going to take the approach of calling you a little bitch every day until you start training your arms properly. So for everyone listening, as a co-host of the Bars Loaded podcast, I wholeheartedly give everyone 100% the green light to message Nick on the daily and be like, oi, bitch, have you trained your biceps today?
Or just send me DMs of like
your arms look really
arms.
small. Yeah, like, hey man, like your arms look really small. Might want to do something about that.
Just send me like screenshots of hot dogs and be like, "Hey, bro, left your arms here."
Nice.
So let's wrap up. Let's wrap up hypertrophy in like a nice little paragraph that people can take home and start thinking about implementing. we've got three pillars of hypertrophy: mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. Mechanical tension is caused by. Oh, bro, you were supposed to chime in, so it was like a seamless transition. I was trying to like form sentences with the two of us, just like using one brain but two voices.
We don't need to go to that level of autism tonight.
Damn it, dude, that was going to be so cool. I almost felt like we could have done that
We can
next
edit
time.
that out. We'll run it again.
We'll work on that for next time. But yeah, so fuck. Now I forgot the sentence that I was up to. Yeah, so mechanical tension being lifting a heavy weight that forces maximum fiber contraction of the tissue that you're trying to hypertrophize
Within an active range of motion.
within an active range of motion. Beautiful. What a fucking legit sentence.
Alley-oop.
That was sexy as fuck.
That's the one thing I probably do want to make a massive fucking caveat on. Like the whole like full range of motion bros who don't understand how to keep tension on their fibers and they just drop into passive tissue.
Yeah, or outside of the active range of the tissue that they're trying to recruit as well is another really big one. Like I actually have a post ready to go up tomorrow from
Yes.
I think I'll post it tomorrow, so it'll be out before this comes up, of me doing a single arm cable row. Back when I worked at World Gym, I had someone film it for me, and it's like my elbow just comes back to the side of my body, and that's like the active range of the lat. And you know, obviously, we spoke about this in a recent lecture, which
Yep.
made me go back and find the video because I've been doing fucking cable rows like this for 8 years because that's how the fucking lat works. And if you know anatomy, you know that that's how you train a lat in its full range. It's not going all the way fucking as far back as you possibly can and just
Like not
dumping your shoulder
necessarily
forward.
coming in like that.
Yeah, no. So I think that's an important caveat as well. Is like that the active range or the function of the muscle that you're trying to hypertrophy, like it can only go so far, and that's as far as you need to go.
Yeah.
And overemphasizing that range is recruiting extra secondary, tertiary muscles acting on that, and it's also probably reducing the load that you can load the movement in as well. Which is, if we know load is a key contributor to mechanical tension, load should be like at the forefront of our mind. Like, don't like stop underloading shit for going for like range that is outside of the active range of the tissue that we're trying to hypertrophy.
I think as well, like if you are in a setting where you have external support, like for example, a chest supported T-bar row, load that motherfucker up so that you actually can push it hard. If you're on a hack squat, load that motherfucker up so that you have to work hard.
Yep.
One quick little example that I love recalling. I had a friend of mine, she was training at Pro Rule with me a couple of years ago, and she had a set on the pendulum squat. She's like, I'm going to do 8 reps here. That'll be like an RPE 8. And I'm like, are you going for 8 reps or are you going for an RPE 8 at this weight? She's like, an RPE 8. I'm like, fantastic. Off we go. In my head, I'm like, I'm going to keep telling you to keep going until we start to see a decline in speed and we start to see you actually reaching a point where failure looks like it's a couple of reps away. Guess how many reps she got?
16.
It's like 24 reps or something that she was able to get. I'm like, that's not a fucking 8. That is a chronic undershoot. And that's why you didn't have adaptation.
Yeah.
When people actually get pushed properly in an exercise and they train to proximity of failure, to be honest, I don't think most people are actually ready for how hard that actually should be.
No, that's right, and that's a big caveat here. So, how then would you look at implementing? What would you look at implementing into a program, or how would you teach someone that how to scale their RPEs effectively, or
So,
take how to take their sets close enough to failure to actually get the benefits from this?
so I will generally. There's a few different ways I look to approach it based on the lifter. So, for example, I had a guy in today for his weekly PT session, and we were doing some hammer strength like chest press, and you know we did a weight for a couple of reps. I'm like, oh, like what did that feel like in terms of difficulty out of 10? Like what would you rate the RPE? And he's like, oh man, that was a 9. I'm like that. He was like, that was really hard. I'm like, cool, man, cool. We can work with that. I didn't really say much, and I was like, cool. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes rest. We are going to go again on here. This time, I want you to shoot for 15 reps. And he was doing 8s. And he's like, but dude, like, I could only do 8 just. I'm like, do you believe in yourself? He's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. So believe that you're going to get 15 reps. We're going to get 15 reps. He got fucking 18.
Nice. Same weight.
Yeah. And I said to him, like,
Nice.
dude, I'm like, half the thing that you are holding yourself back with at the moment is a lack of belief that you can do more because you're super new to this. I'm like, but we are going to have sporadic little sprinkles of exposure where I'm going to fucking thrash you because I want to see how much you can actually push. Like if you can push
Yep.
to the point where you're hitting 18 reps with a weight that you think is actually an 8 rep range for you. Mm-mm.
One thing that I will often use
Mm.
in programs is work to a top set of 12, for example,
Mm-hmm.
then drop 5% or drop 5 to 10% and do 2 AMRAPs.
Yeah.
So it'll be 3 sets, work to a top set of 12. And it'll be on like accessory movements. So this is, say it's like a bench workout. And then on, your tricep extensions, I'll say work to a top set of 12, drop 5%, and then 2 AMRAP sets.
Yeah.
And then I can gauge then based on the number inputs on those AMRAP sets how close to an RPE 8 or 9 that 12 was.
Yeah.
Because if that top set of 12, say oh, I want that at an 8.5
Mm-hmm.
or an 8, and then they drop 5% and they get 25 reps on their AMRAP sets, that 12 was more like a 5.
Mm.
So then that's a really good teaching tool where then they've actually done those sets, and I can be like, okay, so see here, this math just ain't mathin'. And what we want to be looking at here is if you're able to drop 5% and do 25 reps,
Yeah.
this 5% more, you're looking somewhere around that like 18 to 20 mark being like a 9-ish.
Mm.
In reality for most people, but it's not. And I'm not saying this, and Ben probably is because he's a fucking cunt, but like I'm not saying this to be like you're fucking shit and you don't know how to train. I feel like this is a super important point, so like I want to highlight this to be like this is a teaching moment.
Mm.
I know that you don't know what it feels like to take a set to this place. This is where we need to go. To get to the results that you want to get to, this is where we need to go. And when you actually take your training to those places and you do those things, like you do things to that level, you can make adaptations very quickly.
Yeah.
We've all been in gyms where you see these people come and go. They train every day. They train consistently, and it's like 3 years down the track, and you're like,
You haven't
"Dude,
changed.
like you actually still look exactly the same." Like that to me is going backwards.
Mm.
It's like if time's moving forward and you're not moving forward with it, you're standing still, you're actually going backwards. So it's like no progress isn't no progress. No progress is actually like backwards progress. You're not even keeping up with just like the continuum of time itself. So like, what we want to do is if you're there doing this shit, like, and you want to actually make a change and you want to get a result, this is a teaching moment. Like, this is how we need to train to get the result. And when you actually do that, you can fucking make results. You can make progress really quickly, a lot quicker than what you think.
Yeah. Like, I love using the example. It was a shoulder session I did years and years and years. Like, this is going back probably like 2017. And I had like a giant set of lateral raises, but it was a triple drop set lateral raise. So it was fucking gross. And I remember I dug so deep and pushed that so hard that I started crying. Because the
Mm-hmm.
place that I had to go to in order to keep pushing through that discomfort, just like the little lock that you put on the emotional cabinet,
Mm-hmm.
fucking burst open. I was bawling my eyes out as I'm doing like dumbbell lateral raises by this point with like 6 kilo dumbbells. And I'm like, I was bawling my fuck. It was like an ugly fucking cry too. And
Man's got trauma.
it's why I can train well. But like, I don't think most people are actually willing to. And again, like, this is not to say it's a bad thing, but
No.
I think when people look at the results that they're actually wanting to achieve, and as you said, like the work actually required to facilitate those adaptations, it's not fucking pretty.
Yeah. So it's okay to not want to go there and to not make training that uncomfortable, because for a lot of people training is like the fun part of their day. But just understand that the trade-off is the adaptations are going to take longer to to happen. But like, if you really want to fast track this progress, make your training uncomfortable as possible, and I guarantee you it's going to result in results
Hmm.
faster. Like, watch me run a track meet this year and be fucking good at running, because that's going to be my main focus for the foreseeable future. Is I'm going to get fucking great at run mechanics and sprinting, and I'm going to learn how to do it properly, and I'm going to get fucking fast.
Do you know what I kind of want to try and incorporate back into a lot of my training? Getting my vertical jump back up so I can dunk again.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be doing the same shit. I'm going to be jumping. I'm going to be running. Watch me fucking run a 100-meter athletics meet and do what can I commit to? Watch me do a fucking 14 beep test at 125 kilos.
You guys heard it here first. Nick is going to do a beep test this year and score at least 14 at around about 125 kilos body weight.
And run an athletics carnival this year
Nice.
or early next year. I think I spoke to, Brittany?
Yep.
Yeah, I spoke to Brittany. She's a member at Maitland Athletic Centre, which is literally part of the complex where the fields are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she said that it'll be like Jan or Feb when they're running track meets again. They're coming to the end of their season now, I think.
Yeah, she's just finishing all of her like qualifiers and shit now.
For the higher ones.
Yeah.
So she said I think Jan Feb for the low like club meets, which I'll run 100 then. I'll do a beep test this year. And yeah, I guess tomorrow will be making me into an animal. So
Fuck
sick.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, the moral of the story is my training is going to be like, I'm going to make it uncomfortable because that's the adaptations that I want to make. If like, an hypertrophy isn't like a comfortable thing. Like, I think a lot of people look at like their 1RMs as like, I'm going to really push the envelope, and then the hypertrophy stuff, this is like the easy like pump stuff. Whereas like proper hypertrophy training is every bit as uncomfortable as your 1RMs because it's mechanical tension based, not metabolic stress based. You want it to be heavy, you want it to be hard, and you want to take it to failure. And on that note, I am going to have some chicken burritos because I can hear the chicken sizzling and it's making me hungry as shit.
I've got pad thai and satay chicken skewers for dinner tonight.
Oh, I'm a sucker for some pad thai.
Mm-hmm.
I might have some spoonfuls of peanut butter after my burritos.
Mm-hmm. Or put some peanut butter in your burritos and kind of make it like a impromptu
A pad burrito. A padrito.
burrito.
A burr thai. No, that doesn't work.
No.
No.
Go home, Nick. You're drunk.
Yeah. It's good.
I like.
You do it so good. I'm just going to record you do it.
My wife.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Bars Loaded. Until next time.
Have a good
Happy
week,
lifting.
guys.